Yeah, these are just the stats of the year, if you want to be notified of an emergency. The only thing that's different here from last Saturday is I actually gave you a copy of the plans for the Town Hall Police Department Fire Department from 1971 that they wanted to build. Just a historical perspective. So,
I'm ducking from.
How much money you want?
yeah, Sean's back to hospital, so I guess we'll see if folks will sign.
So are they?
The one thing that's different is the last two pages of the packet, I have the plans from 1971 drawing for the Town Hall Police and Fire Department. That's what this one is.
I know who you are, and yeah, hi there. How are you? Good. That's the public hearing following the police station. That's housing standards, which may still be of interest, and that's the agenda for the meeting to follow the public hearing about the facility. The rest of this is about the facility.
Just yet. We're still waiting on the folks from the construction firm to arrive, so we haven't filled out the card yet. We have plenty of time, I think. We want to fill one out, so it's going to be a few more minutes. We only have one microphone tonight, so we're going to share. So.
Good evening, everyone. I think we're going to get started. We had a way we were going to conduct this meeting, but I think we'll improvise because the construction management firm is not here yet. So anyways, good evening. Welcome to tonight's public hearing on bonding of potential bond for a Town Hall Police Station located over on Silver Street, where the old highway shed used to be. Just for those of you that may not know, this is the Select Board, Denise Knowles, Miles England, Mike Rollo, our Recording Secretary, Sal Terry, and our Town Administrator, Caroline Kendall. So what's going to happen this evening, we're going to introduce what the project looks like, how we got there first of all, what the project looks like, and then hopefully the folks from the room will be here. If they're not, we'll open up for public comment. When they get here, we can suspend, hear their presentation, and then you can ask questions specific to that project. I have a sneaking suspicion, given Saturday's meeting, that there may be more questions that are unrelated to the specific project. I do apologize for the heat. It's actually warmer than it was in the school on Saturday. It gives you any comfort, but it is still cold. The heat is on, and hopefully it's a big room. It'll take a while to heat up. And I think we'll be here for a while anyway, so we may see it actually warm up. So anyway, last year, the year before last, the Select Board formed a Space Needs Committee to look at the needs of the Rollinsford Police Department. It's no surprise to most people that there are some issues that have been going on for a number of years with the police station as it exists in the basement of the town hall. So because of that, the Select Board at the time wanted to look at options. And so they formed a committee. Folks that are the newest iteration of that committee that were working on it are Denise Knowles, who represented the Select Board, Kim St. Hilaire, Bill Irving, Charlie Putnam, and Chief Ducharme. And we thank them for their service. They were charged with looking at the needs of the police department. They reported back to the Select Board last Thursday, right? Last Thursday, with a plan. The plan you see before you. If you don't have copies of it, they're on the table over there, of a combination police department and town hall facility. We've had this as long as most of you, maybe a few more days if you only got it on Saturday. So what I'm going to do then is to turn it over to Chief Ducharme to explain a little bit more background about how we got here. But I did want to lay some of the ground rules real quick too. If you have questions, please raise your hand. You need to state your name and where you live, just your street, don't give your street address for the record. Because if we do move forward with this project, we need to have a very thorough record of this meeting for our bond counsel to prove that we went through certain steps. So with that, and I would ask you please to direct your questions to the chair of the board. Please, if you hear something you don't like someone else say, it's not your meeting. You can yell at them out in the parking lot if you want to, but please just direct your questions or your anger, your concern, any of that to the Select Board, and we will either answer directly or redirect it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Ducharme. Bob, you want the microphone? We only have one, so.
I can yell if you don't mind.
Okay. And when it does come time for ask questions, if you'd like to, just please come up and get the microphone. It's going to be over here, and we'll let you ask the question.
Good evening, folks, and thanks for coming out tonight. Just as a little bit of a historical perspective, as Mr. Roll has said that I would do. Tonight is actually the third such attempt by the folks in town since 1970 to either talk about renovating the town hall or demolishing and building a new building. Back in 1970, the Select Board at the time had commissioned with a company out of Massachusetts to design a brand new town hall, police department, fire department to be located on Silver Street. And the diagram for the outside of the building as well as the floor plan are actually included on the last 2 pages of the packet that has been distributed tonight. So just to give you some historical aspect, this is not the first time that we've tried to do something with the town hall and evaluate and to see if it meets the needs of the town. Obviously, that plan didn't fall through for some reason. I don't know why. In the mid-70s, the town elected to build a fire station on Roberts Road and put the highway department on Silver Street and renovate the town hall. The renovation that was done at the town hall back in the mid-70s, was done by a local resident, local contractor from town, and it was more of a cosmetic repair as opposed to a complete renovation. That suited the town well up until the mid-1990s when, again, the building fell into disrepair. It looked like an eyesore. For some of you remember, we had that great big ramp on the outside of the building that was for the handicapped folks, and it went round and round and all the way around. It just didn't make the building look appealing. There was heating issues, there was no air conditioning, there was water issues, and the biggest thing, and what's prompted tonight again, it's the police department. We had about 300 square feet and 2 small offices upstairs, and it really did not meet the needs, for modern law enforcement. Additionally, there were a number of liabilities for the police department being in that space, mainly for those who were around back then. Remember, we had that ramp on the outside of the old town hall that had about a 15-foot drop right next to it. And we actually had occasions when we were fighting with folks and they tried to toss you over the railing. So our insurance company looked at that and the egress and ingress for the building and some other issues and deemed that the police department upstairs for those 2 rooms was really a liability issue waiting for the town to happen. So the select board at the time formed a committee, and at that time, initially it was just to address the needs again for the police department. And as we went through the process, it was determined that we would not build just a police department, that we'd actually renovate the town hall. Back then, the folks were adamant that we were going to fix that white building at all costs and make it fit for the needs. So that brings us to the mid-1990s when we had the last renovation of the building. At that time, to renovate the building properly was a minimum bid of $1.2 million to do the building correctly. The town allocated about $700,000 to fix and renovate the building, so we're already started behind the ball. A number of things were cut out, like insulation, proper windows, and a bunch of other things within the building. And that's what's led to part of the problems that we're experiencing today, with the water issues, lack of heat, the lack of proper air conditioning, and whatnot. So again, that brings us up to this point, and since the first year that we moved back downstairs in 1999, we had water issues downstairs. The folks back then said you're always going to have a water issue, but the contractor promised us that we would never ever have any water issues. Originally, they were going to put drainage around the outside of the building. That didn't happen during the renovation. And at times, when it rained hard or when the snow melted in front of the town hall, we actually had a river running through the PD from the Main Street side of the building going out to the back. So the town hired somebody to come in, and they said that by putting this lava ash, by injecting lava ash into the ground in front of the building, that would solve all the water issues. Well, it didn't. A couple years later, we ended up digging up the inside of the PD on the Main Street side and the parking side and put in what they call French drain on the inside of the PD. And that helped the situation, but it didn't end the situation. We ended up putting a sump pump right next to the toilet in the men's room, which our insurance company does not care for. So a number of issues were done to alleviate the problem. And last year, I think it was last year, the town actually put drainage in the front of the building and around the back, and it's helped alleviate the problem. So we no longer have the river running through the PD, but what we have now is we have hydraulic pressure pushing the water up through the bottom of the PD, through the cement, and into our space. We used to have runners going down the hallway like they do upstairs in the town hall. We had to take the runners out because the water would accumulate underneath the runner. So when the custodian would come in and clean it, and you move the runner, the bottom of the runner was all wet, and it was where the runner was on the tile, it was all wet. However, where the runner wasn't, it was dry because it obviously evaporated. There's a slow moisture coming up through the floor. In the 20 years that we've been down there, twice now we've had to jackhammer the floor in certain areas of the PD because it's pushed the floor up so far that we actually had like a 4-inch rise out near the front door in the lobby and by the reception area. Right now, the floor is rising in the booking room and in the patrolman's room to the point where when you open the booking room door, it gets caught on the floor. you can still use it, but it does get caught on the floor. So it's telling us that the pressure is still pushing the floor up underneath from the building. And we actually have several doors that we can't lock properly. You have to play with them and fight with them, whatever, because everything seems to be kind of doing a kitty corner type thing. And if you look at some of the walls upstairs on the town porch, you can see what's actually working its way up to the second floor as well. They've got some cracks in the walls upstairs. So because of those issues and a myriad of other issues, HVA system was not designed properly according to the folks that are dealing with the issue now. It wasn't designed properly back then for that building. The heat wasn't designed properly for that building. So this is what's causing a number of problems that we're having now with heat, lack of air conditioning, hot water, and things like that. So because the building now has a whole myriad of issues with the building, again, the select board set up a meeting or a committee to look at the space needs, and originally it was for the police department. And the committee met, and we actually looked at several sites in town, one being adding to the fire station. And actually back in the 90s, we actually looked at building onto the fire station as well. But back in the 90s, the cemetery was adamant that we weren't taking any land left of the fire station because the cemetery owns that. And we look at the right of the fire station, they have their parking lot, and there's just no room to the right to build anything over there because the state actually owns a good portion of that little corner right there. Additionally, I felt that having a municipal complex about 30 feet from the main railroad line was an accident waiting to happen. You know, since I've been chief, we've had two major train derailments in town with freight trains, and they do between 30 and 35 miles an hour in town. I could just imagine if you had a major accident with the Amtrak going through at 70 miles an hour, how far those cars are going to fly off the track. So there's always a possibility that you could lose your emergency services building by having it so close to the railroad track. So that's why I've been against us exploring the idea of attaching it to the fire department. The town owns a large parcel of land out in the middle of Scotland off of Greenview Drive. And we determined that really wasn't a good fit. One, because it's way out in the middle of nowhere, and two, to get a road to meet today's standards from the edge of Greenview Drive out to that lot was just going to be too cost prohibitive. So that was out. We actually talked about Sandy Bank, but Sandy Banks is a small parcel of land. It's kind of in a hollow, and that tells us that there's going to be some water issues because everything else is higher than us. So that was thrown out. We talked about a piece of property on Rollins Road that's near the overpass on the Rollins Road side, but all the neighbors there told us that field was always wet. You're probably going to see all the cows out there. That field's wet most of the year. So we decided not to do that. The last piece, I was talking with some folks who own a large section of land in town, this field, hoping to do an even swap with some town property and whatnot, but that didn't come to fruition, and so that's not an option for us right now. So having said that, so I said to myself, you know, what does the town own that we can put a building on, not have to pay additional fees to buy a piece of property to put the building on? Well, we own the Silver Street property already. Over the last couple of years, the police department and our funds, we paid to have the survey done on the property, we paid to have the building torn down, and we paid to have the hazard mitigation taken care of with that building, in anticipation that maybe someday something would happen with that property. The committee requested and put out a request for proposals, and we received 5 back from a number of different companies. And of those 5, the committee looked at all of them, and we picked 2. One was a modular type construction, where you build it off-site someplace, haul it in on a trailer truck, put it in place with a crane. And the other one was the insulated concrete form, which is actually a cement building, cement walls. And we had those 2 come to a public hearing last year, and some of you were there, and they presented their proposals to the committee. And out of those 2, we decided to move forward with the ICF method in growing construction to go forward through the process here. So they are here tonight, and they're the ones who actually drove the plans, initially for the police department, and then secondly for the police department and the town hall being on the second floor on Silver Street. So they'll present their plans afterwards. We sent out a survey to all the folks who live on Silver Street from the fire station down to Cricket Lane and the folks on Silver Lane, and it was a very simple survey. One, if the town authorized the building of a police department on Silver Street at the old highway department, are you in favor or not in favor? And we did indicate that the building would look residential in nature and not look like a commercial building. We received 28 in favors. And let's see, we received 28 back in favor, one definitely not in favor with no comment, one said it should be police and fire, and one said it should stay at the town hall and renovate the town hall. So those are the results of the survey, 28 and 1, 1, and 1. We also had a company out of Dover look at the issues with the water, along with a civil engineer, look at the issues with the water downstairs, and they gave us an estimate of almost $700,000 to completely gut the bottom floor, put drainage in underneath our floor, and put the walls back in. However, the $700,000 does not include the entire retrofit of our space, nor would they be able to give us a guarantee that that would prevent water infiltration into that basement again. As far as the town hall is concerned, we had a developer come and look at the building. This developer takes old municipal buildings and repurposes them, and there is an interest in doing that. Not a guarantee, but he is interested in the building. He was actually interested in the building back in around 1998. We went through this process before, but there is some interest in that building. So I guess the option here, folks, is if renovate the town hall or build new. Renovating the town hall, it doesn't give us any additional space that we need and that the town needs upstairs. You're not going to have any additional parking. You're still going to be restricted because we're kind of landlocked where we are. We have an apartment building on one side and an apartment building behind us. And I can't imagine the town would, through eminent domain, take someone's property. I just don't think that we want to get into being that type of a neighbor. So, okay. So we have here the folks tonight from Groen that actually submitted the plans. As I said, for the first floor, they remodified it because it's now a year later, and they were also asked to come up with a price and a plan for the second floor for the town hall purposes. Now, the plans that you have in front of you for the second floor, those are for illustration purposes at this point. I had to give them an idea as to the number of offices that would be in that space. So if the plan went forward through negotiations with the select board and the folks that work up there, I mean, the walls can be moved around. As far as the plans for the police department, as far as I'm concerned, they're pretty much set in stone that the offices are going to be where they are located according to the plan.
All right, thank you, Chief. So at this time, we're going to hear from the representatives from the construction firm that the Space Needs Committee recommended that the Select Board move forward. After they've done their presentation, you'll have an opportunity. We'll open the actual public hearing for comment period. Questions for the firm. Probably are best to deal with that first so they don't have to stay all night. We'll stay as long as you want to ask questions of us, but I don't want to keep them all night. So if you folks want to come up here, we only have one microphone tonight, so.
Sure.
Thank you. I'll just get started while they're setting that up. I'm Fenton Gruen. Jeff Greenhalgh is our commercial division manager, and my son Joe is our architectural designer. Joe put together the plans, the designs for this building. Just a few characteristics. Well, first a little bit about our company. We are a family-owned company. We're based in Rochester. if you know where Staples is in Rochester, there's a building right across the street from that, a 3-story office building, and we're located in there. And we actually own that building. And that building is an ICF building, an insulated concrete form. Just for those of you who might not know, it's a styrofoam form inside and outside, about 2.5 inches thick. And then you pour that, you set that up, put rebar in it, straighten it, get everything ready, pour it full of concrete. Once it's full of concrete, it's like any poured concrete wall. It has the strength and the durability of any concrete wall. The advantage of this is with 2.5 inches of high-density styrofoam inside and outside, the inner core of that acts as a thermal mass. So you keep very, very uniform temperatures, very comfortable. And just a little bit of the backstory on our building. When we were building the building, we closed it in on November 30th. And we started a construction heater in there. And we had gotten some bids for a construction heater, and they wanted us to do a 1 million BTU or a 2 million BTU construction heater with 2 different companies. And it was a 27,000 square foot building. We put 150,000 BTU natural gas salamander heater in there. It took about a week to bring it from 35 degrees temperature in the building to 55 to 60 degrees. And then after that, that 150,000 BTU heater, and that's about the size of a residential furnace in a house, kept that 27,000 square foot building warm during construction, even with doors open and closed and just lots of traffic. Now that the building is complete, we found that one of our regrets is that we even put natural gas in it because we don't use enough to pay the minimum charges on the bill. It's extremely efficient, uses about 35 to 40% of the energy of a typical commercial building. So that's our experience. We built, again, a similar design build project for the town of Farmington. We did, that is a police and fire building, 19,000 square feet. It includes 7,000 square foot apparatus bay and 1,900 square feet of living quarters for the firemen. And that building, their heat for that building is about $5,500 a year for a 19,000 square foot building, including an apparatus bay that has, 4 doors in the front, 4 14 by 14 foot doors in the front and 2 in the back. And it's actually using about 1/5 of the energy that their combined police and fire were using before in their old buildings. This building is also ICF, whether it be the 1-story that it started out as the police station, or 2-story as police and town hall. Just some other advantages of the ICF. The sound level, it's extremely quiet. It's almost sound studio quality sound blocking because of the styrofoam inside and outside. It's very comfortable. You'll have uniform heat throughout the building. You don't get, it's almost no draft. And we know that again from personal experience in our building. No matter where we are in the building, it's just comfortable uniform heat. And then, of course, the energy efficiency. But then one added aspect for an essential building like police and town hall is it's extremely safe. It's very durable. Obviously windows would be a point that somebody could break in or whatever, but they won't come through the walls. It would take a tank to come through the walls. They're extremely strong. They're reinforced with steel, and then they're solid concrete. So those combined things, it's just a real advantage to have this. The building that's being proposed for the 2-story building is 13,381 square feet. It comes to $144, almost $145 a square foot. A big advantage of design build is that we look at this and we knew what your budget was. We've been talking to the chief for, 2 years now? And we knew what the budget, we knew that you have a limited budget, and we don't add what's not necessary. One of our frustrations sometimes with a building that starts out architecturally designed, and by the way, we have nothing against architects. We work with them, we team up with them on many projects, but sometimes they put more expensive things in there than you need. We've had the experience in the past that, you know, you have $400 bathroom sinks and $450 toilets and $400 bathroom faucets. It's not necessary. You can get very high quality bathroom sink for $150 to $160, and it's a Kohler and it's good quality. And we stick with that because we know there's a budget. And so we work very hard with you, and that we go through the design, build, and carry that through. When, in the phase that we're at, the point that we're at right now is the completion of the concept phase and the pricing. And we've done a very thorough analysis of the pricing. We're confident of the pricing. If you gave us this building today at this price, we would contract for it and build it for that price. That part is complete. We still have to finish the design development, which there'll be engineering and actually an architectural stamp on the building. On the site itself, because the site is less than an acre, you do not have to have civil engineering done on the site or a site plan done by a licensed civil engineer. You can choose to do that. That's not included in the proposal. You can choose to do that, but the town also has the authority to waive it. You will not only save the costs of that, but in many cases that goes right back into that same aspect, that it can add a lot of costs in the process. Now, we're not talking to cutting corners or making shortcuts. What we do, we'll work very closely with your code enforcement, and we'll make sure that everything is done properly. We know the water problems you have now. We're not going to take any risk with that. There will be proper drainage, everything else, but that's a choice that you make as a town as to whether you want to go through the full civil engineering on the site. After we've gone through that part, then and it's completed, then we go to completing the construction drawings of this. That whole process would be about 12 weeks. So if you approve this in March, about the middle of June, it would be ready to go to construction. With permitting, etc., we could probably be in the ground, likely be in the ground by July 1. So that's some of the background to this. You see the building there. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Jeff is our project manager. Jeff, is there anything you want to add to this? So, rather than me just keep talking, why don't you ask questions if you have any questions? Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
Why don't, if you have a question, you can just, we only have one microphone, so you have to speak loudly, state your name and your address.
At ICF, is that the one?
You need, sir, you need to say your name and what street you're
Dave
from.
Gallup from 535 Prospect Street.
Thank you.
UP. Then you, ICF go up to the first floor, second floor too, or?
It will be the whole envelope of the building, the whole conditioned envelope of the building. In other words, the top of the second floor will be ICF, including the garage for the police cars.
And that's all included in the...
Yes.
Ken Shorey, Silver Street. Does that include the price of the septic system that you have to put in there?
Yes, it does. And you'll see me defer to Jeff on the pricing because he's intimately familiar with that. Yes.
Robert Kavanaugh, 13 Woodland Drive. Question on the two-story for the town hall. Could we get that built with the second floor unfinished for future use?
You could.
And when we sell the town hall, maybe use that money to renovate the top?
Yeah, it could be done with the second floor in place and just no finishes on the inside, no interior walls, etc. Yes, that can be done.
Okay, thank you.
include the hookup into the town water as well, right?
Yes.
John Lewis from Expo, Silver Lane. Does this include a basement?
No, it does not.
Any reason why we wouldn't have a basement?
It would add cost to it, but also for your, the least expensive is building it on a slab. I'm not sure about the drainage on the site, and I think that if we started digging down, you might have issues with that. But this does not include a
Okay, I
basement.
was thinking of additional storage or expansion later on.
That would really be up to the town. That was not in the request, and that's not part of the design. And again, if that were to be considered, we would have to very carefully evaluate the site and look at the seasonal high water tables and make sure that you don't run into the same problem that you currently have.
Cellular Pool, Washington Street. So has a drainage plan been done yet, or are you waiting till we pass this?
A drainage plan for the site?
Yeah, like,
It has not, and again, we'll work with you on that.
my other question follows up on one asked earlier. How hard is it to expand the building in the future if it's ICF, if we wanted to add another department to it, like the highway or the fire department?
Well, it's not difficult. Your limitation is going to be your site size there, but it's not difficult to add to it. You extend walls, extend the floors, extend the roof, and with the concrete walls, obviously it's not quite as easy to cut through. You can't do it with a sawzall like you can with wood, but it's not difficult to cut concrete. You get somebody that specializes in cutting concrete, and you can cut holes in the walls and open up to a new space if you want to do that.
And I'm not sure if you can answer this or the chief needs to answer it, but is there enough space in the garage for all of the current police vehicles?
Yes,
Thank you.
currently, yes.
Hi, Wendy Chase, Short Street. Question about the storage, that's kind of has me intrigued. If there's not a cellar, that's fine, but is there an attic, or how much room are you going to need for storage? I mean, there's got to be springs.
The design for the police facility, we have adequate storage that we need based upon the rooms that are there now. The upstairs at this point is humongous for the town offices. I mean, they could set a side off from one side or the other just for storage. There's the opportunity for them to enlarge the conference room that's up there, so you could actually, instead of having meetings down here, you'd be able to have them on the second floor up there. I mean, because this is a truss system, you can take walls within the interior and move them wherever.
Okay.
So.
And just an add to that, one of the advantages of this to the modular is the modular had a load-bearing wall. I think it was every 16 feet. This is free-span trusses, so anything inside the building can be moved around. Now, the floor system of the first floor is going to be supported by interior walls. So once that's decided where those walls will be to support the floor system, then those have to be maintained. But on the second floor, between the second floor and the roof, it'll be free span, and the walls can be moved anywhere you like in there.
John Bosch, Lawrence Road. If you should be lucky enough to get the contract, what kind of a warranty are we going to get?
We have a standard 1-year full bumper-to-bumper, so to speak, warranty on the building.
Any further ones for, like, we'll say, ventilation?
The ventilation systems, any of the mechanical systems have manufacturer's warranties that go, extend out beyond that. Windows, for example, have anywhere from a 15-year to a lifetime warranty. So those go beyond that. Our warranty is designed to cover, it's designed to make sure that everything is done, working, and if everything is working well at the completion of a year, it's going to last a long time after that. And again, I'll compare it to Farmington. Farmington has been in use now for 2 years, right? For 2 years. We've had a couple of extremely minor callbacks in the first year, and nothing since that. Our building is 4.5 years old, and we have, well, the biggest problem that we had with our building is when a 2-foot pine tree blew over against the building and just scratched the outside against the concrete. It didn't do any structural damage to the building. But other than that, they're just solid.
Do you have all your own people that work for your company, or do you sub the work out, such as HVAC, windows, carpentry, etc.?
The subcontractors in mechanical, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, drywall, we subcontract. We have our own crew for ICF and framing, and we'll subcontract the roofing, but we have a just very trusted subcontractors, most of whom we've been working with for years and years and years. And we pay them on time, and they like working for us, and we like them working for us, and they meet our standards.
Thank you. Please.
Dave Gallup, Gang 535 Prospect. You don't work with Richard, do you?
Richard
Witcher.
Witcher. We have not. We've competed against them. But no, they're not a subcontractor of ours.
What do you do with the heat?
Jeff?
The heat?
Yeah.
It's gas-fired furnaces and AC.
Jeff, why don't you?
I think I can speak up. Gas-fired furnaces and AC throughout the building.
Does the gas fired too much, you said, on another building?
Well, in our building, we would have used a different type of heat. You have a different situation here with your traffic situation and the number of people in and out of the building. Plus, you have you have a garage for your police cars with big doors opening and closing, a sally port, etc. So again, this is propane. You won't be paying any minimum charges on that, and so I think it's the right way to go for this building.
John Lesniak, Silver Lane. What about security systems, alarms, so forth? Is that included in the price of this?
No, I didn't. No, that's not in our part of the building.
Fire alarm, that's right.
Yes, fire alarm.
The fire alarm is included with the price of the bill. In the contingency and equipment section that's added to your packet there, that would include telephones, security, alarms, things like that. Furnishings, equipment.
Count 13 Woodland Drive. Who are you using for contractors for fire system, HVAC, and subcontractors? What are they actually?
We will, first of all, if you approve this will all be bid out. Local contractors will have a chance to bid. They're welcome to bid. Again, I'll let Jeff speak to that as to the ones that we've generally used in that area.
Sure. Referring to Farmington that he mentioned previously.
Speak up.
In the past, the local contractors that we have used for electrical, for example, is WC Colbath out of Dover. We've used them quite a bit. With our HVAC, we've used RTH Mechanical and Moose Hart are the ones that we typically use. Plumbers would be Mark Canning, who's a local plumber. I'm trying to think of who else we use. For painters, we probably would work with either White Diamond or Peak Painting. Those are the ones we've worked with in the past. Sprinkler contractors, we usually bid that out, and that's pretty generic. Superior, I'm trying to think of who else. Superior is generally our lowest bidder. Fire protection systems, etc.
And there again, we can't say definitively who we use, because if Superior, we normally get very good pricing from them and we work well with them. However, if they just got 3 big jobs, they're going to price it up. And so then, you know, somebody else would likely get the low bid on that.
Is that a dryer or wet system?
So when,
It's a wet system. And for those of you that wonder what that means, a dry system doesn't have water in it unless a head activates, and then it'll release and let water in the system. In other words, it's pressurized with air, and it only gets water in if it calls for that. It's a more expensive system if all of the fire suppression system is in conditioned space. You don't need to have a dry system. Then it's a wet system. And that's another thing that we do is on the second floor above the offices, we have a high ceiling for the trusses. We put drywall on the bottom side of the trusses. We put all of the mechanical, the HVAC systems and the fire protection system, etc., underneath the drywall, underneath the insulated roof system. And then we put a suspended ceiling under that. So all of those mechanical systems are in conditioned space, not in an unconditioned attic. And we think that's extremely important for reliability and for efficiency down the road.
Celia Leopold, based on square footage, what is the maximum capacity for the single floor plan and the second floor plan of people?
I don't know that number, and one of the things that we do as we go along, you know, one of the next steps is we engage a licensed architect, and that architect does a code review, and that will tell that. But I can't give you that number, Joe, or you. We just don't have that number right now.
So that's a nice segue. I'm a little bit confused over, wow, this has been an interesting presentation. What? Oh, sorry, Angela Matthews, 437 Locust Street. So I was at the hearing on Saturday, the budget hearing, and there were a lot of questions raised that I still don't feel have been sufficiently answered. So these are, I think, questions for the select board. What is the dollar impact on the tax rate? I haven't seen any amortization schedules for the 30-year cycle of this bond issue. I see this is, for me, this is sort of like way ahead of where my thinking is in the process, but I might be alone on this.
Angela, can I just stop?
Yes, sure.
So,
I'm going to try to answer your questions, but do you mind us holding just for a moment? Are there any other questions for the construction firm? If not, I think we will excuse them. So I don't think you need to listen to the conversation about, you can if you want, listen about bonding, but I think I'm going to get to your question. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure. Please, Mr. Mayor.
Will there be a list put out of the contractors?
Yeah, we will, yes, we will bid it out. We'll, have it open to bid, and anybody is welcome to bid on it.
No, I mean, will there be a list once you decide on who you...
Yeah.
Celia Leopold, from your perspective, does it matter whether the police department or the town administration's on the first floor?
That's something, they'll fit into place in one sense, but it's rather hard to put a Sally Port, which is where the police car brings prisoner, et cetera. It'd be hard to put that on the second floor.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for the folks from Groen? Yes, please.
Eric Boss, Main Street. What's the maximum allowable parking spaces based upon you guys remember?
Do you know what the
well,
parking
we have
space is?
10,400 square feet, which is probably 50 plus or minus parking spaces, depending on the traffic layout and access to the garages at the rear. Want to push the building way to the left now?
Yes.
Okay, so we'd have to relook at that, because originally we were gonna go around the left and leave just the parking alone. So we'd have to, when we get to the site plan, we would do that. The targeted number based on the square footage is 50 of paved area, but we'd have to define that.
Yes. Go ahead.
Suzanne Buer, North Lane. So with regard to, I guess there will be a lot of asphalt if there's parking. So it occurs to me, having worked with the MS4 permitting process, how are we managing the runoff from that, from all of that asphalt?
Well, that's part of the, when we get to the site and civil review for the site and analysis of the site. Our proposal was based on a generic site, not a, a sloped or a wooded or whatever to put this through. So that's why, as Fenton mentioned, we have to wait till we get through to that to do that.
If I could just
Yep,
follow
sure.
up. So is that a civil engineering study that you suggested would be optional on our behalf?
Correct. That is
But,
correct.
all right, if it's not optional, if we feel we need to do it because of the addition of all of this asphalt, approximately how much would that be?
I would, it'd be in the neighborhood of $15,000.
I would say.
15, I think 20 max. I mean, this is a small site, it's quite simple. The soils appear to be good, but I think 15 to 20,000 would cover that.
Do you have an estimate of the annual operational cost of it, including like inspections, general maintenance? Any idea what that would run per year, like doing seal coating, restriping the lots, elevator inspections, fire inspections? Has anybody done any cost analysis on that?
For our building, and we have 700 parking spaces, we have a building that's twice the size. I'm trying to add up numbers from our financial statement in my head, but I think with the striping, snow removal, all of that combined is in the neighborhood of $2,500 a month. And for us, snow removal and landscaping is a significant number because we don't have a lot of room we have to move snow off. And so that becomes an issue there. But that covers everything on ours.
Are there any other questions regarding the plan that these folks are presenting? If there, okay, one more.
Based on the site, it cannot be done on one story, correct?
So, again, last call. Any other questions on the physical? Yes, Martin.
Hi, Lorraine Hanson, Watson Lane. I just have one question, and that is this type of building, can it ever be a three-story building? Can you do it with an ICF with this design?
Yes, it can. To add a third story later on to this would be expensive. It always is. To take something apart. To make a three-story building in the first place, absolutely. We are currently in the approval phase for a 5-story ICF building in Dover right now.
Any other?
Hi, Linda Chase again, Short Street. Could you tell me, what is the outside of the building consist of, like what type of roofing and siding?
It would be asphalt roofing, standard asphalt shingles, lifetime shingle on there. And when you say lifetime shingle, it's not. That's the shingle manufacturer's warranty. It's really 25 years is roughly what that would last. And then vinyl siding.
Thank you.
Any other construction questions? All right, well, thank you very much for your presentation. We're going to move into the next phase of questioning, and so, Angela, I'm sorry for cutting you off. Your first question was about what the impact on the tax rate is?
Yes, certainly for that. I was looking at a whole array of questions that seem still unanswered. The question of whether the town office is going to move to this building, what the second floor will look like. It seems like this is a concept to which we can respond, but not exactly. I don't feel confident responding to this as a plan in terms of a bond issue, so I'm used to concerned interesting presentation. Is this what we're moving head on? So I'm a little bit, contractors and who's going to do the work feels so further ahead in the thinking than I am right now. So my questions are all about a lot of unanswered elements.
All right, so where we're at in the process, answer that part first. The Space Needs Committee presented the option of a combined police and town hall facility. Because of scheduling, because of requirements by state statute that go along with the official ballot referendum voting that we do, the SB2, commonly called it, this is the only version we can bring forward at this time, if the board chooses to place it on the ballot. That hasn't been decided yet by us. We chose to vote unanimously to send it to public hearing, because I think it's important for everyone to hear, but we have not had a deliberation yet on this proposal. So that's where we're at. That's why we're only discussing this option at this point. You originally asked, though, about the impact on the tax rate. It depends on how much we bond. I can tell you that the interest rate right now looks like it's 4.5%. And if we were to bond 2.4 million approximately, it looks like it's about 69 cents on the tax rate the first year, and it does go down clearly because you're paying off the bond and the interest. If it was for the full 2.5 million that has been discussed, it's 75 cents. Again, it would go down every year thereafter until the bond is paid off. I'm trying to think, did you ask anything else that I didn't answer? I'm sorry. And I do apologize for cutting you off. Just, we're hoping to have all the other questions done. So.
It's okay. I spoke out of turn and out of order. No problem. All of it is, I had a lot of questions about the engagement of a wider circle of people getting input to the design and to the decision about moving offices together. I have those kinds of questions which felt unanswered on Saturday and still are not resolved today, which makes me feel like we're more in concept mode than in implementation mode.
So the, okay, I understand your frustration. We were presented with this plan on last Thursday, so, pardon me, 2 Thursdays ago, I'm sorry, 10 days ago, my apologies. There is, in 10 days, there was enough time to notice the public hearings on it, because you're at one of them. There have been, though, I will say, for the Space Needs Committee, 2 years worth of meetings that are always noticed, and they're always open to the public, so people can go to them. And they did have a public hearing this past summer. I can't remember exactly what month it was in. I went to it, and it was about as many people in the room now as it was then, maybe a few more people, but not that many more, which I think is kind of sad, to be honest, because we're asking to spend a lot of money. There's not a whole lot of folks here, but those of you that did come, thank you. I should have led with that, sorry. I was trying to be positive. But, so, I believe there are some unanswered questions that the board still are just trying to understand ourselves. So, I think we share your frustration in that sense. But there have been opportunities, though, to learn more about the process as it went along. Please go ahead.
Judy Nelson, North Lane. I'm going to sort of piggyback on what Angela had to say. I think there do appear to be a lot of unanswered questions at this point, and the time frame for the voters and even for the board, the select board, to make a decision is short, especially given, I think, we're new to the SB2 process and the timing of everything, and to get all the answers that we might like to have to move forward, the time is very short. I love the concept of the building. I have a few concerns about the site and some other ways of how things are going to unfold bit by bit, but I think in order to create a warrant that, with all of our questions more or less answered, what will bond council cost, what will, a number of things like that we haven't really all the paperwork for the bonding to go forward. Again, there's an awful lot that has to happen. I guess that doesn't happen until after the public weighs in. But for myself, I am going to suggest strongly that you consider putting this on hold for another year, and that we fill in some of those details so that the town can make a have a full understanding of the decision for $2.5 million.
So this is the third meeting public hearing we've had. And I hear people saying that they have a lot of questions. These are the times to ask the questions. So I'll ask Ms. Matthews and Judy, ask the questions, because how many more public hearings do we need to have on this? Where the same group of people attend and nobody asks anything. So ask the questions and let's try to answer.
I think I said at the beginning that we're not gonna hit one another, against one another, so if there are questions, let's go this way.
This is the forum for the questions.
I got a question. I got a question for you. Exactly what have we got for a choice? It looks like we're stuck with Silver Street with this proposal. And there's a choice of whether we go police department, and town hall. Is that we got A or B?
At this point in the process, you only have one choice. You don't have both. Because the way it has to be, the public hearings have to be noticed within a certain time frame, and we're butting up against that time frame. We only have a couple other days.
It's a two-story building on
This is
Silver
it.
Street or nothing.
If we move this forward, that is correct.
I think Silver Street is a bad location. I said it Saturday and say it again. We lost our option there when the townspeople voted not to buy that lot that home was built on to the west side of Silver Street.
Am I on? Suzanne Hewitt, Nordic Lane. So, I said some of this on Saturday, and I will say it again. I support the project, the process of looking at solutions for our space needs. I don't feel that we have, and what's been done today is necessary. I don't think it's sufficient. And there's a lot of things that we still don't know. One of the major pieces is, what Sunny just alluded to, what are other options? And we haven't priced out what it would cost us to renovate Town Hall. And if I look at the space needs, sort of generalized space needs that we did in 2015, I think, it lists some deficiencies. It doesn't have a price tag associated with them, so we don't really know what they would cost. And it seems to me, if the cost of doing them is $3 million, that makes a difference to how we think about this. If the cost is 1.5, 1.8, even 1.9 million, I think it makes a difference. And the truth is, we don't know what that is. We haven't taken the time to do it. And also, if that turns out to be a viable option, I don't know that it is. There are a lot of issues with Town Hall, so I don't know. But that's the point. I don't know, and I think I should know in order to make a really considered decision. But if it looks like it is feasible, plausible, then we have that piece of land which has some value that we could sell and put towards the cost of renovating Town Hall, if that's the answer. So it would also be a good idea to have that land appraised. That's another piece of information that I think it would be helpful for us to know. And that is, what is the value of that piece of land on Silver Street if we thought we could sell it and put towards these renovations? And to go back to that study that was done in 2015, I did go back to look at it in preparation for the meeting, and sort of the conclusions at the end, the end of the slides that were presented, had to do with Town Hall and Police Station overall impressions. One, adequate size to host both police and Town Hall. Inaccessibility of both police and Town Hall needs to be addressed. I think we know that elevator is really very difficult. The police department is in need of safety upgrades and building health improvements. We also know that, although we have, since this was done, put in mold remediation issues, and we did do drainage on some of the more vulnerable sides of the building. There's an opportunity for expanded town use in the current Town Hall. but there is significant repair and upgrades that are necessary. So it would be interesting to know what the cost would be for those repairs and upgrades in order to think about and compare whether, which is a really very nice looking building, I have to say, but to compare, again, what are our choices? I mean, this is a really big financial investment. Is it 2.5 million for that? Is it 3 million for this? Or again, 1.7, 8, 9 million? I think it would behoove us to know that.
I just left the sorry, Jody LeBoy Carnes, Highland Ave. I just left the select board in March, my term was over. So just some information of what has happened with Town Hall in the last several years. I was the one that did the fire inspections with Deputy Chief Hurt. And the sprinkler systems on a regular floor are not in the right spot. So where Suzanne used to sit was not safe. They don't meet any of the requirements. The ADA lift does not work well in the cold. It's supposed to stay in the up position in the cold weather. Is that still a problem since I left?
It has a personality.
Okay.
We know what it is.
Okay. The third floor does not have any current electrical system. There's still wire and tube. You can see through the walls into the siding. There's no insulation in most areas. You're not supposed to be on the third floor at all, although we store some of our tax stuff up there. Per fire code, when I walked through it with the deputy chief, not all walls have insulation. The windows, if you ever sat by one, you know they're not working. The third floor, if we were to keep it, you have to reinforce all the beams and everything to create, you're not even supposed to be up there. But when you walk across it, it's kind of scary. But it is a beautiful building. I absolutely agree with you. It is a beautiful building, but to save it, I can't see it being cheaper than this option. Not done. Boiler still needs to be fixed. Second floor, not enough electrical outlets for the equipment that they do use. They are using extension cords, which are not allowed by fire code. So those had to be changed. We did the water drainage problem on the outside of the building. Engineers came in, gave us a plan for the outside and the inside of the building. The select board at the time, including myself, chose to only do the outside of the building, not pulling up the whole floor like Chief was just saying. The select board decided to do just the outside of the building. When the construction company came in to dig out the outside of the foundation, they thought it was brick going all the way down. Underneath that brick are large boulders, because that's the way they built in the 1800s. The boulders were much larger than they expected. The engineer came back. Even the engineer wasn't expecting that. The construction company recommended 3 options. To place stone with pressure-treated wood, then a thick plastic barrier, then more stone on top. Option 3 was to pour an external foundation at about $60,000, which was the proper way according to code. And the engineer said that was the best option. The select board decided to go with Plan 2 with the wood and the plastic. I was against it because I knew the ground was open. Let's fix it once. But there wasn't enough money in the budget. We didn't go underneath the stairway because moving the stairs would have been too much. We only did those corner walls. Once again, remember, there's still water coming up through the floor. Work that recently completed, we did do the membrane roof over the new part of the police station. That was $13,000. We did the steeple, which I want to say it was $22,000. I did get an estimate on the remaining part of the roof, which was $66,000, and that was October 2017.
I don't want to talk about it, I can't understand.
Sorry, if you want, some folks are having trouble hearing you on the microphone.
I was almost done. I don't want to. I was almost done. So we did try to buy the land We did have a public hearing next door, and the town voted it down. We did every option we could when I was on the board to try to buy pieces of land to fit. So our current staff is, we have a town administrator, we have a bookkeeper part-time, we have a part-time assistant. So it's in the budget. Right. But I thought they were per diem right now.
I had a temp for like 3 weeks.
Okay.
That's
Okay. We have a building inspector that has a tiny little team. Our town treasurer, our 3 selectmen, planning room board. The planning room is a disaster, you know. You look down. And if we have any subdivisions going on or anything that the planning board is doing, there should be easels of what they're working on in town hall. So if you go to Dover, if you go to Somersworth, the easels are up and showing you what they're being worked on. So I just wanted to give you a little history of what's been going on in the last couple of years. In 2017, just our heating, electric, water, and minor maintenance was $44,000. In 2018 was $38,000. This year it's estimated for $30,000. And that's just to keep the doors open. So that is something to think about. So we sat on this. They gave us a first floor, and as a select board, we sat on it. I wanted to put it to town vote. So then it went to committee. Now they recommend the second floor, which I totally agree with. I really think it's time. I love that building, I really do. I think the second floor is beautiful, but we don't have the money to fix it. We really don't.
I have to respectfully disagree.
Use the mic, please.
Actually, so you already spoken once, you don't have to spoken yet. Let me let you go first, and then so then you can go. So you want the microphone? Or
Yeah, my name is Jack Boyle. I live on Clement Road, and the only thing I want to say is time is money. We keep spending time on this, and you can study things to death. And I think that, you know, the cost and the expenses are going to continue to go up on anything we look at.
And then,
Real quick, Herb Bueyer, 37 Woods Run. To follow up with this question, does that tax increase include the offset that you would realize from the cost that Jody described? Or is it just the flat price of the bond, not considering the offset of it?
that is just the flat cost of the bond. It doesn't have any offsets associated with it.
Okay, Suzanne Heward, Nordic Lane. So I don't know what those numbers are. I know that there are deficiencies, and I think what I was suggesting was not a piecemeal approach. What I was thinking of was having an engineering consultant, a building engineer, I don't know what the professional person is, to come in, take a look at Town Hall and say, just like what they did with the school several years back, RGS, and it came in with a very big price tag. Same thing may happen here, but I don't really know that. And what if it doesn't come in at 3 million? What if it comes in at 1.7? But I'm talking about somebody coming in and bringing this up to a point where it's aesthetically pleasing, environmentally or energy efficient, all of those things with optimum re-engineering of space in the building so that we're using optimum space. That's what I'm talking about. I don't think we've ever run those numbers. We know some piecemeal, what somebody said would cost us 2 years ago to do this and what somebody said now to do that. But as far as a comprehensive look at what it would cost to bring Town Hall up to where we think it should be, we've not done that. And with regard to the planning board, I don't think new space is the problem with material in the planning board is not just the space needs, it's staffing and personnel to try to keep all of that stuff organized. Thank you.
Just trying to be Miles. Lorraine, and then Cindy.
Lorraine Hanson, Watson Lane. My concerns have been mostly about the fact that it seems to me that we're rushing ahead to try to get something done before we're really ready. Once we've had the idea of perhaps moving town hall completely, which is a great idea perhaps, and I agree with Suzanne Heward on this, it's probably a good idea, but we can't compare it to anything. We have nothing to compare it to. As she says, we don't know what it would cost to bring the town hall up to snuff, so to speak. And that's my concern. The other concern I have is I noticed on the plans that we have seen so far is the Banwell study done in 2015, I think it was, suggested that the police department should have a square footage of around 8,500 square feet. And this particular plan that we're looking at, because of the problem with the site, puts the police department at 1,000 square feet less than what was recommended. That may or may not be problematic when we're looking toward a future for the police department, because we don't want to be in a position where if we build it, that by the time we paid off the bond, we got to start over. I think that's a concern. The other concern I have is that all of the work that the Space Needs Committee has done, which has been excellent to date, the problem is they've never even had a chance to address the space needs of the administrative services at Town Hall. They haven't looked at that until very recently when someone talked about putting a second floor on. So we don't know if the square footage in the new building would be sufficient, or if it would be sufficient for the Town Hall years to come, not to mention the other issues about what do we do with the other town halls if we did in fact move out of it, or the cost of moving, which had been already raised, the downtime if you're not in a situation where you're providing services to the town while there's a move going on. So there's all of those questions that I would really like to have answered before we start paying bond counsel to go forward. And it seems to me that, and I agree with everybody who says the new building is just really a lovely idea. I'm really worried about going forward without having that information down and solid before we start paying bond counsel and going forward. Because I agree that time is money, but at the same time, I don't want to be in a situation where we're paying bond counsel and moving forward and finding out we're not meeting our needs. That by the time we've paid off the bond, we're going forward with needing more space or more something. I just don't want to go there. Thank you.
Celia Leopold, Washington Street. It was suggested that this is the time and place to ask questions. So I have several questions that I'm hoping the board and the chief can answer. What happens if this doesn't pass? Do we go back to square one? Does another option come forward in the future? What are the options for town hall? Can we use it for another entity like the library, the SAU office if necessary?
You want me to start answering some of those? You have a list there, so.
Yes.
All right. What was your first question? I'm sorry.
What happens if this plan fails at Rosenberg?
If the select board chooses to place it on the ballot and it doesn't pass, then nothing happens. You're back to where you started from.
Second question,
Well, you start over, I suppose, actually, part of the better way to describe it. Go ahead.
if this passes, can the town hall be used for the library or other entity by the town, an SAU office or some other form?
I don't know. We have not looked at that.
They are designated 31 spots, I heard, at that, and I see 3 to 5 handicap spots. Are there designated visitor spots or like police spots, town administration spots, or is it all open parking? Do we know that yet?
I don't think we've, where's Bob?
I
You can't hide back there, Chief. Pardon?
I just heard parking.
Okay, so the question was, Chief, will there be designated parking spots? Obviously, there will be handicapped accessible spots that, by law, that will have to be there. Will there be reserved spots for like visiting the police, for visiting town hall, or it's just going to be all open? And what about, like, say, staff parking, I guess?
But if you look at the drawing in the handout here, you're parking at the front of the building for police and or town folk. And on the right-hand side, which is the main entrance for the town hall, you have 2 rows of parking on that side of the building as well. which could be employees, visitors, guests. But the illustration only shows 30 parking spaces. As you indicate, as Rowan said tonight, you could put 50. Theoretically, put 50 parking spaces on there. Well, the drawing just indicates 30 at this point.
What was next to the side?
With the current bond that we have for the fire department, their truck that they got last year, what would be the total tax impact between the two bonds, and how long would we have both bonds going concurrently?
We have them 28 years.
Combined, we haven't done combined. But for the budget. We have the most recent copy of the budget. I can tell you what debt service is for the budget currently. It's approximately 30,000 in there. No.
Somebody's, would you like to call me on?
So then, do you know what the debt service is currently?
Yeah, it's about 8,000, I think.
80, okay.
But
I don't
what's
have it in front of
important
me.
to understand is that there really are three current loans. Two through the municipal bond bank. One is 10 years at about 190,000. That's the transfer station, so that will go on. I think this is the first year of payment, so we'll go on an additional 9 years. I think the fire engine turned out to be $50,000, and that was for 15 years. And those are declining payments, and that's sort of another thing. I mean, you can choose to have your payment either come down or stay fixed across the years, and it has an impact on your interest rates. And so, where you end up getting the loan has an impact. But anyway, so it's a 10-year on the transfer station for 190,000, 15 years on the fire station, fire truck for about 350,000. And then it was a USDA loan with a fixed price of, I think, 17,000 a year for 30 years.
So we're into year 28 for that, so.
That one was several hundred thousand.
So, say we have not, if we move forward, clearly, with with this on the ballot, we would, for the deliberative session, which is February 2nd, we would have that information for folks. But at this point, we have not done that.
And based on your bonds last year and their fees, do you have a projected bond fee schedule or anything now, estimates? Or is that going to come at the deliberative session?
For this project?
Yes.
They're on the table over there. That's why at the beginning of the meeting, I don't remember who, I apologize, but someone asked what the, actually I think it might have been Angela, asked what the rate was and what the cost would be over the
Does that
tax
include,
index.
like, time of the town staff to put together the bond? Like,
No, that's just the actual what the bond schedule is, and that's on the table over there. It also doesn't include the cost of retaining bond counsel. There are costs associated with that as well. Do you have a few more, or there just might be some of the folks that want to?
Does the police have the option of bringing dispatch in-house so we don't have to contract out with other communities?
That really doesn't have anything to do with the physical building, the bonding of this building, but I can tell you that it'd be a heck of a lot more expensive to do our own dispatching than it would be to, you can ask the cities of Dover, Rochester, Somersworth how expensive it is,
And
and the town of Durham. But
I guess the committee looked at how much it would cost to contract out. Is that an astronomical fee compared to building this building?
The Space Needs Committee did look at it 2 years ago. Charlie Putnam actually investigated that for us. I don't want to put him on the spot, but as I recall, it was either prohibitively expensive in one case, non-existent in another. Speaking of like the options of either having Somersworth, Dover, the county, or the state police cover, no one was really interested. And if they were interested, we couldn't afford it. So compared to what we were paying currently for police services.
For right now, my last question is we've heard from the public that putting the two buildings, the town hall and the town hall administration and the police department in one is a great idea. How does the town officials weigh in on this? We haven't heard from the town clerk or the tax collector, from my knowledge.
Well, I'm going to put this, I don't want to put this in a flip way. They're residents and they could be here tonight. I don't think I see them, so I don't know. They have not approached me as a board member. I don't want to speak for the others, but I don't know if they've approached them. I don't know how they feel about it. Are you good for now? Okay.
I'm good for now.
Pause.
I have a question for the building committee. Did you folks look at tying into sewer rather than having a septic system? I know there's not sewer on Silver Street, but directly out back. I mean,
It was a ravine. Chief, you want to talk about it?
We actually did look at that, and they said it would be very expensive because you can't just have the pipe go straight across the ravine. It would have to go down, a pump at the bottom to shoot it back up, to get it over to the Silver Street property. And the expense was maintaining that pump, because that's going to run 24/7 whether you have power or not, so, yeah.
I would think though, the septic system of that size, the number of people you're going to have in it would be expensive. The second thing is, anybody that's been in this town for 25 years or more, and there's quite a few sitting in this room, I think that the White Elephant, the town hall, has been nothing but a money pit. I mean, I'd like to know what we dropped in it. It's got to be close to what, 1.5? If not more? You guys say more?
I wouldn't vote.
Okay. And we certainly didn't get the time frame on it we thought we were going to get. And I notice we kind of got on to grow in there. We've been talking about his subs. Well, a lot of the attitude of poor workmanship is a result of that white building. I think the people that worked in there, I don't think purposely did bad work, but I don't think we got our money's worth. So, you know, food for thought. And I see a lot of people shaking their heads, looking to agree with me. But I still would like to have you give us choices. I like choices. Anybody here don't like choices? I don't hear nothing.
Mark. And then, I can't see who's next. Did you have your hand up, Mark? Yeah. And then, I can't see who's next. Who would be next? Oh, Larry, I didn't see. I can't see past people's heads. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm short.
I can't see, so we're very comfortable.
My name is Larry Larkin. I live in Partridge Lane. I lived in town 30-something years. Long time ago, I voted to put money into the town hall. And I was new in town, and the town hall is kind of like a teddy bear. You know, you all had a teddy bear, and as you got older, you didn't want to let it go. And that's what we were doing. We voted, we were going to spend $700,000. It was $1.2 million. The tower still leaked. The water going through the police department. All the time, and by the way, no matter how much parking, if we build this new place, it's going to be more than you have now. All we do is, let's wait, let's do this, let's find out if we can. We've been doing that as long as I lived in town. I'm 3/4 of the way down, more than that, down the checkout line. There was one thing I thought that's not going to go away before I die. Now I find out there's two. The wars that we're fighting and the town hall that's being built. You gotta do it. I mean, we've been dumbing around for years trying to fix that place. It's not healthy in the police department. The slope of the roof, the snow must come down on a, basically you got a lean-to on the side of the building, right? You gotta do it.
Years ago, Mark Kuchar, Somersworth Road. Years ago, I sat in and was involved with the town hall, and the historical group was involved in it. And they went around looking at other town halls. Wakefield was built by the same architect. New Durham, Alton, I don't know what it's called. But anyway, they renovated their town halls and they did a great job. So we recommended an architect, and then that was the end of it. Well, here again, I'm not knocking the selectmen that were involved at the time, but they wanted to do it on the cheap, and they did. And they went with other architects. You had a contractor, and you didn't have any clerk of the works, you had nobody watching over these guys. They took us to the cleaners. All right, so that's what you end up with when you don't do the job right. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing, I don't know why we're not going ahead and looking at a police facility by itself and the town hall staying there with the town offices. Let the police facility go on Silver Street and just go with that, and then we have extra space using the downstairs for storage or whatever. That's just my thought.
Charlie and then Judith. So as your town moderator, I abstained on the recommendation that the Space Needs Committee made because I wanted to get to town meeting and have the body be able to let me moderate your meeting or decide that you didn't want me to moderate your meeting. So I'm not expressing a position for or against this bond proposal. I did want to clarify the statement. I was the member of the committee that looked into the possibility of contracted police services. I think, I can't get access to my emails right now. I think I summarized it in an email for the police, for the committee. I think the bottom line was that it was not a money saver for the town, in part because other towns pay their officers more, and other towns have built new police facilities, so they're paying for their own facility, and that would be reflected in the rates for contracted services. I don't know that the result was that it was prohibitively expensive. It was that we didn't find that there was enough advantage to it that it was worth our time to continue examining that option.
I have a couple of questions too that I hope can be answered. Certainly, as Kim mentioned earlier, time is money. So one of the first question I want to ask is, if this goes forward as a 2.4, 2.5 million bond, what happens when we find out that that's not really enough to do everything that needs to be done? How do we raise the other funds? I mean, we have a nice building, everyone's all set to go, and suddenly, well, we didn't do this. We needed to do civil engineering. We needed to do this. We needed to do that. And we didn't think about this aspect of the move. We didn't think about housing the police somewhere else while they were being moved. What happens then? What is our recourse to raise more money? So that's a question I would like to have answered. And the second thing I just want to throw out, I believe we heard on Saturday that South Berwick Police Station, which I think is not that far away, maybe a mile, was overbuilt. Is it possible for us, for our police station, for us, for the town, to contract space with them so that our police can get out of the position they're in and just have space over there? I'm just curious as to going down.
I will take up the last question first. I think if it were not for the Salmon Falls River and what that delineates, the state boundary, you may be able to actually go over and share a facility, but because there's different licensing issues, we've talked about this in the past, it is difficult as it is if someone from our department or their department needs to come over here and do something, let alone be housed there. So we talked about that. Do you want to?
Yes, exactly. We have no authority whatsoever in the state of Maine. Right. And technically, we have no authority outside the jurisdiction of Rollinsford unless that community invites us in a police function.
I'm not asking about having authority. I'm asking about being housed there, but working only in Rollinsford.
We can't transport folks from Rollinsford into the state of Maine.
Okay, that's
It's not a practical solution. And your first question was the cost. So there are a few things I'd say about that. The proposal from the folks at Rowan has been described to us as sort of a soup to nuts approach that if they say it costs, I don't know, not everything associated with this cost, this 2.4 is just construction. There are some, what did I see on there? There are some other costs associated with it, outfitting, that sort of thing. But with the physical plant, the cost is the cost, and they're not allowed to go over once the contract's been issued. But if you see on the sheet that was over there's a multi-packet. There's a whole list of things that's included. But your point is well taken about additional costs as far as civil engineering. I think it would be pretty, that's just my opinion. I don't want to really offer my opinion much here because I'm supposed to be listening to you all, but I think it's pretty foolhardy to ask you to spend $2.5 million and not have a civil engineering plan. I think that's how you get into what we got into, what was just brought up by another resident. It would be pretty foolish to just sort of steam ahead not really knowing what the ground is like, but what the drainage is like. But that's just my one person's opinion. There could be, so if we were going to move forward with this, if we were going to place this on the ballot, we won't take a position this evening. We're going to vote on it next Monday. We're going to hold a special meeting on the holiday just to deal with the warrant. In that time, we would try to come up with additional, if we were going to put it on the ballot, additional costs that would be associated with the plan and try to do best, I hate to use the word, but best guess as to what it might cost. I don't mean that as not just a guess. We would do some research and contact some civil engineering firms that we've worked with in the past and get an estimate how much that may cost. I think that what the folks from Groen this evening said is probably a pretty accurate number, $15,000 to $20,000. Given our past experience with engineering reports we've had done for other projects in the town, I think that probably makes sense. But we would try to do our best to factor that in. If an emergency came up, we would have to petition the Superior Court and ask for a special meeting. I don't know what that looks like anymore, given our new system of elections. We're all still trying to learn as we go throughout this process. You all on the school side have had more experience and a few more staff members to assist with that process than we have. So we're still trying to figure that out. It would be a little bit of research and our best information we have moving forward, and then and hoping that we got it right. I guess is the best I can put it, Judy. I can't give you a more definitive answer than that. Sorry. Yeah.
So just a couple of things. First of all, my comment. So my comment about the South Berwick Town Hall was that, not that it was overbuilt, that they built it without considering the town hall. And so now people in town are trying to figure out, now we have two buildings with, a handful of people in each building, you have to maintain and operate both those buildings. So that was one of the reasons, as a member of the Space Needs Committee, that we also decided that option 2 was the best option, because it doesn't make sense to put $1 million into the town hall, up to $1 million, I'm going to guess, to maintain that building. Another set of all utilities, everything, and then have the building on Silver Street as well. So you're still going to end up putting money into that building and some unknown dollars. So my other thing was, I was pretty sure that we had some numbers from Banwell on those options, and I'll try to dig those out because I was pretty active in that meeting as well. And then I think Bob will also confirm that there is a little bit of money in that bond in the event we had engineering costs of $15,000 or $20,000. I think there's a little bit of room in there, Bob. Could you?
Yeah, we've added a contingency line item along with furnishings and equipment, and there should be. we're not expecting there wouldn't be enough money in that line item for the civil study for that property.
And my last is a question. If this town decided to vote for this building and this project, are we committed to that? Does the select board have the authority to say, although the voters approved it, can we take 3 months to get costs to repair the existing building? I think it's on the select board to decide when and if that project moves forward in the following year.
We would want to consult with bond counsel as to, there's a lot of moving parts of the question you just asked. I think probably the short answer, though not the complete answer, is that it would be up to the board's discretion as to say when construction was going to start. That being said, the bonds are issued, 3 times a year, 4 times a year? It's not. 2 times a year. 2 times a year, right. So you need to make sure you make the mark. So so I don't know when it's in May and when's the.
I don't know, but you've also done all of your bond administrative work ahead of time when you going before.
Right. So.
Just to follow up with that, Mike. So are we committed to build that building if the voters approve it? Can the select board get an estimate? Say we get an estimate on that building, it's significantly lower, so we say no, it's not building. Can you guys make that decision to not build it?
I want to understand your question, Kim. I think I understand the general premise. Say it again. Turn it off again. So, if we were going to bond $2.5 million and it came out to be $2 million, is that what you're saying? Can we change things, or I'm not understanding your question?
So the question is if the voters approve this project, are we committed to building it? So if we went out and got an estimate to fix the town hall for $500,000 and it made sense, could we nix this project?
Well, you could, sure, I guess. But let's be clear, you're going to be spending an awful lot of money before this to go through, to work your way through bond counsel. It's going to cost a lot of money up to that point. I mean, it would have to be extraordinary circumstances to not go forward with a bonded vote.
And at what point are we committing ourselves
Right.
to the bond? Because basically, to do this, you're getting bond approval, and by the time you're voting on it, at some point, and Suzanne may be able to speak better to this, but you're committing, because there's a bond sale considering this project. So, well, that may be technically possible. You're going to have administrative costs, but maybe even fees for backing out.
Right, so it may not be feasible, but I mean, I think it's back to, it's a whole new different scenario because there's a bond involved. It's not as simple as, like, a couple of years ago, we were going to buy a truck, a small little utility truck, and we didn't do it because it didn't work out in the schedule, and we just didn't do it.
So what I'm suggesting is maybe we take, 2 to 3 months.
No, I get what you're saying now, for sure. Yeah, no, I understand that, but if you want to move forward on this, you have to engage bond counsel now, immediately. So there are going to be costs that you're going to start incurring, and once the ball starts rolling, it's not quite as simple as stopping it. It's not a normal, or sort of quote, a normal warrant article. It's not as simple as trying to go out and buy a snowplow or something. There's a lot more moving parts to it, so I don't think you can. I mean, technically you can, but I don't think I can't say that. No, I'm going to retract that. I don't know. I don't think that it would be advisable once you start engaging bond counsel to do that either. I think there's got to be some sort of liability on the town as far as fines and things if you don't meet your commitment. So I also don't want to cause the town more money if that's the case.
So, why do we have to engage them immediately? What's the reason behind that?
Because there's a set practice, industry practice in state law that requires certain things have to be done to issue bonds in the state of New Hampshire. And I don't mind deferring to the person that managed it the last time we did it. It's a pretty detailed process. I mean, it's not quite as simple as just going down to the bank and saying you want to borrow some money.
Right, so it's an intriguing thought. The things that you have to consider, Michael is absolutely correct, that I believe the town has already contacted bond counsel in order to get proper wording for the town warrant. So this is a process that starts right away. And so what happens is, the town is going to need to engage with the services of bond counsel, and that's going to be a contract. And so it's going to be, it was like $10,000, I think the last time, for bond counsel. And that was for $1 million. And so I think it relates, that's a couple of years, it relates to how much you're bonding. And what the bond counsel does is it is even though we're the ones who have to pay for it, but it is there to certify to your either loan, your bank, or the bond, New Hampshire Bond Bank, or whatever, that we are solvent, that we're not going to make a profit on the money that we're doing. There's all of these kinds of things that take place. And so you've got, and when you start to apply for the bond itself, and the next bond sale, I think, is in June. So there's some kind of commitment that happens. I don't know exactly when, but it's difficult for you to just say, oops, sorry, didn't mean it. So, but I don't know exactly how far in advance it is. But the other thing to consider is that Groen is probably going to want us to sign a contract at some point in order to freeze or guarantee or whatever the amount that he is. So there's that to consider too. He may, he says, well, if you can't tell me until June, then the price, then I don't know what that price will be. We'll have to consider it then. And as long as I have the floor, there is another question. I want to just ask.
Hold on, just think, will you finish with your questions, Kim? Sorry. I think you had the.
So just so I'm clear.
So hold on, I'm coming right back to you, Suzanne.
So we would have to engage in the bond sale in June. So
the bond sale happens in June. The application process happens starting now.
So is it prescribed that we have to do it after the vote, by a certain day we need to engage bond counsel?
Well, the bond counsel, you're going to have to engage it now. The bond counsel is not the municipal bond bank. Okay? So the bond counsel is an attorney that we hire in order to certify to either the bond bank or Kennebunk Savings or whoever's going to loan us the money that, we're good, we've done this, we've had our public hearings, we put it in the newspaper, with the board is going to have to certify 33,000 bazillion things. So bond counsel has to get hired, pretty much right away. The bond sale is in June or July, with payment in July, something like that. And so, that's why you have to engage with bond counsel, reasonably soon. Did I answer? Did you have another question? I'm not sure I fully answered it.
So I don't get that we are 100% committed to the project if it gets voted on. It seems like there may be some costs involved, but we're not necessarily locked into building this building.
Well, that would be true. I would say yes. I mean, if something were to transpire, we'd probably be out some amount of money to bond counsel. But that's not the end of the. I don't believe the warrant compels the board to execute it. It just gives them the authority to execute it. That's how other warrants transpire. So I don't want to be. I'm not the font of all wisdom on that. That's how I would interpret it.
So as I said before, there would be a cost to us. There would be penalties associated with not moving forward. We would lose money, and that we've invested by engaging bond counsel. So there's lots of hands up. I'm sorry. Carrie hasn't spoken at all yet, so you get to go first.
Hi, Carrie Boyle, Clement Road. Just a question about the bond. So if we have to engage with bond counsel now or soon, we're doing it before the vote, so the warrant article could be voted down anyway after we've engaged, so it seems like you're still, either way you're paying a penalty or trust.
There would still be some money that we're putting out now. I think that's probably a true statement, but as Caroline just reminded me, the wording on the bond is whether it's contingent upon funding, right? So that goes along with the contract for bond counsel as well. I mean, you're still going to be out. We might not be obligated, but you'll still be out money to the bond counsel. I don't know what the actual contract will say, whether or not if we don't move, if we decide not to move forward, we still may be on the hook for paying her for a full 10,000 or whatever. I mean,
I'm sure that not deciding to move forward is quite different than not
not
voting
voting
to approve.
voting for it, correct. Right, I mean, they have, bond council, sorry, I was misunderstanding your question. Bond council understands that it's at the mercy of the voters. If the voters say no, well, then they understand that we're not moving forward, so there shouldn't be a penalty there. But if we just up and decide that, okay, well, we've gone so far and we decide we don't want to do it now, there would be a cost associated with that. Is it as much as going forward with a $2.5 million bond? Of course not. But, so.
You mentioned one thing about petitioning Superior Court in case we should need more money. Why can't we just petition the Supreme Court, I mean the county court, and have another town hall meeting in, say, June or sometime in May, when all the questions are answered?
You know, I don't know that just postponing because we want more information rises to the level of being able to request a special town meeting. I don't know if it does or not.
Charlie, can you answer that?
No.
That's the safest, smartest answer I've heard all tonight. So, well, there are other hands. I'm sorry, I don't want to. Please go over ahead, Mr. Short.
Just one last comment. I've been living in town for about 50 years this stint. And my mother was born in town, my grandfather was born in town, my great-grandfather was born in town. And I, for one, have never voted to put a cent into that town hall. It's like pouring money down a well. And that's what you got down there underneath the well. Because I've been down there many times myself, looking at it when I was working with the water department. I think that what we want to decide here is not how we're going to get the money, or all the bonds and all that stuff. That's not up to us to do. Do we want the town hall? A new town hall, a new police station? And I say we do. We need it.
Well, my thunder, Red Oaks, Prospect Street. I haven't lived here near as long, just four years or so, but I've known about this issue for the last 2 years. So I've been hearing about it, I've been reading about it, so it's no surprise to me about this. And yeah, you stole my thunder. Yeah, I like Town Hall, I like the way it looks, but it's throwing money. It's like feeding my wood stove with my paycheck. Don't want to do it. There's needs and there's wants. Police station, definite need. That's about it. That's all I've got to say. We need a police station. We need the proper facilities to service the town.
All right, anything else? Yes, Dennis.
Dennis Hanley, 50 Water Street. I've been here since 1937, and I believe that we put enough money into that town hall. And anybody on the select board that's been around for a long time, they know. I believe that we need that police station in town hall. Thank you.
That's Carrie Gregg.
Carrie Boyle, Clement Road. I would hope that the select board would put it forward as a warrant and leave it up to the voters. I mean, it's a good turnout here today, but I think we should leave it up to the voters and at least put the warrant forward.
Okay, it's now 8 o'clock, or just about. I don't want to cut off if people have something new or more questions, but we do have another public hearing after this one. We still have to hold, and we still have to have our weekly meeting. But sure, one more.
So there was some concern about whether or not this building was big enough to accommodate the staff. If you look at the floor plans and you look at what they have for space now, I wouldn't say it's significantly bigger, but it's certainly bigger, and there is some room for growth. So I didn't personally have any concerns about the floor plan. It would give them more space than they have now at the shore.
Anyone else? Yes, Celia.
I have one question that came up earlier. When it was asked if the police station could rent from South Berwick, can they rent space during the move somewhere here in town? Will they get the mill during those moves? And my other question is, if you have to keep the town hall, South Berwick was given as an example, doesn't have a whole lot of people there, but they have room at the top where they use the facilities for town functions. I know at least 3 or 4 town functions I've been there for
And I'm concerned that this does not offer any space to remedy, the plan does not offer any space to remedy town meetings that will hold in here or at school. Where will we have a facility to hold large meetings? That's my concern.
I don't know about the second part. There is a space that's proposed downstairs and upstairs. I don't know, the sizes are in here. Your first part of your question was?
Can they rent?
Oh, I don't know why they would need to, because if you're building a new building, you're not going to be displacing them from the building they're in now, so I don't think they would need to rent anything. I don't know 100%, but I would assume that would be the case. Anyone else on this one? Because I'd love to open the public hearing on the next one. Yes, sir.
Mike King on Main Street. If we sell the town hall, because it becomes somebody else's problem, the purchase, are there any caveats that we put in? Just let me grab a couple. Lawyer or something to ensure that they preserve the integrity, because once it's gone, it's gone. I know, if people go, there used to be a town hall there. We had one, and it's gone now. Is there any, you probably look at that as a stumbling block, because, the people might not want to buy it, but
Right.
it's a big deal.
Right.
You gotta go that far.
I mean, you could.
At least you like the upstairs where there's a
Right.
layout.
Right. Protective covenants could be put in, I guess, at the sale, but you're probably right. I mean, I don't know. If we were going to go that route, we would obviously need to find out that information clearly. But I'm not sure if that's the route we're going to go down yet. But if we do, then yes, that would be something we would want to explore, because clearly there is historical significance to that building. I think Mark mentioned it. There are 4 examples by this architect, whose name is now escaping me, in this area. I don't know, if my roof has a hole in it, I fix it. But you know what, that wasn't always the case.
Well, I'm from originally, I've been here 25 years, and I'm from Portland. We had a beautiful train station, Union Station.
Once it's gone, it's gone.
They're trying to put a strip mall.
Yeah.
That was during the urban renewal.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying, like you said, we dump a lot of money in it, but if someone else buys it.
Yeah, well, also if you maintain your assets all along, it doesn't cost as much to fix them when you go forward, but that's the only comment I'm going to make tonight. Okay, Lorraine, you're going to get the last word, because I want to open up the other public hearing.
I noticed that the chief, Lorraine Anderson, Wasserman, I noticed that the chief had said that he had done kind of a study by asking people about what they wanted to do on Silver Street, whether they objected to the police stations or not. Again, that's another thing that should be done. They weren't asked if they should be, whether they object or not, to a town hall plus police station on that street. And, they just weren't asked a question. So it's, again, I just feel like we're jumping the gun. I'm sorry to say that, because I think that the new building is a beautiful building, but I think we have to consider all of these options.
Okay, folks, Ms. Hanson is getting the last word. Unless there's something new that hasn't come up, I don't see anything, so we're closing the public hearing on the police building at Town Hall at 8:03. We're opening the public hearing on the proposed amendment to the housing standards ordinance right now, so if you want to stay for that, that's great. If you don't want to stay for it, please take your conversation outside. I'll say it one more time. If you don't want to stay for the public hearing that's happening now, the new one, take your conversation outside, please. Okay, so we're opening the public hearing on the proposed amendment to the housing standards ordinance to insert a nuisance activity section. This comes at the request of our police chief. It would add a new section. I'm going to say it one more time. If you have questions or you want to have a side conversation, take it outside. I can get more reverb if we want. Thank you. Alrighty then. Not that I'm getting tired, but we've got some more stuff to do, folks. Okay, so, you know what, I think the easiest thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna call the police chief if he doesn't mind. Do a quick synopsis, because you've already done everything else tonight. And then we'll open it for public comment.
The gist of this amendment to housing ordinance, because we have a number of apartment buildings.
Hold on a second, Bob. Dominic, we need you to be sitting down taking notes, please, for the public hearing. Thank you.
We have a few apartments in town that are a nuisance to the police and to their neighbors. One of them recently has turned into a heroin den where we've made multiple arrests on this building. The Fairfield County Drug Task Force has been made arrests on this building, as have the U.S. Marshals recently made arrests on this building. We've notified the landlord for this building and other buildings when their tenants have been a nuisance to the police and their neighbors in the past. What this ordinance here does, not only allows us to go after the tenants, but now allows us to go after the landlords if they've been properly notified that they have nuisance tenants. So it puts the landlords and the owners of an apartment building on notice that they could be held responsible if they allow to have nuisance tenants remain within those apartments. Simple as that.
All right, so we're gonna open the public portion. Ms. Crozier, for comment?
There are copies over there if you want to see.
As a property owner and taxpayer of the town, I am very much in favor of this because I've already had problems with abutting properties nearby that have been a problem. I had one property near me where they had huge bonfires, and it was so bad in the summertime, it would set off my smoke detectors. Fire department didn't seem to think it was such a big deal, but the police, the sergeant you had, came down and dealt with some of the problems. There are a couple of things you're going to have to deal with. One of them is this third paragraph, habitual nuisance property. It says any rental property, you've got to strike the word rental, because there are single-family properties that are a nuisance as well. Okay? That's one. Just strike that. Then add to article, the very last one, you can't fine them $250 just because they have one nuisance activity. I think you have to add to that, any person who shall violate any provision after being deemed a habitual nuisance property, the habitual nuisance property then shall, upon notification, be subject to a civil forfeiture fine. They're going to be deemed a habitual property, nuisance property first, before you can start assigning them civil fines. My thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you'll see, if you look at the sections before that, it spells out how you become a nuisance property and how it takes 4 or more nuisance events in a 12-month period to become, so that your nuisance event doesn't occur, right, Bob, until...
Correct, absolutely. So number 5 in that case, then will
is
be
your first, right?
I think it's just a matter of clarity, just to make it clear.
Gotcha.
I'm sure the police would use proper discretion on finding the first time.
We would hope. I would hope
You don't
so,
have
too.
their lawyers.
We do want to make it clear as well, so thank you for that. Any other comments? Larry?
I'm just curious, I agree with this, but what can a landlord do to...
Victim.
Can you just...
Start the eviction process. But unfortunately, we find that some of the landlords, they're absentee landlords, and they're not from the community, so they just really don't care about their apartments. All they care about is the monthly rent coming in.
Yeah.
All right, so they can do something about it?
Of course they can, yes.
They could, but they're choosing, some of them are choosing not to, that's the problem. That's why we adopted the housing standards to begin with, because there's a number of them that were renting apartments in the village specifically, that were just deplorable condition, that when they were getting top rents for them, and there was no heat in some cases, and it's just, and so I think this is an answer to a problem that the chief has had ongoing. Tell me.
Well, what do you do if the landlord is an out-of-stater? I mean, he's not even a resident of the state of New Hampshire. It's like Massachusetts. How would you go after him?
Well, we do a warranty complaint and send them a civil forfeiture notice. If that doesn't work, then there's a small claims action.
Well, so there is ways to get.
Oh, there are ways to get them, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like if anybody commits any other infraction, they're not a resident of the town, you can still go after them.
The thing is, the town needs to be willing to actually do that and to back the chief up. And I think there's an appetite, at least on this board, to do that. Well, the next one, but this one anyway. Any other comments on this? This is the easy one of the night, I guess. Doesn't cost anything, so. All right, well, thank you very much. If there's no other public comment, I'm going to close the public hearing at 8:10. And unless there's any objection from the board, we're going to start our weekly select board meeting. And I invite the public to stay because it's going to be a barn. Okay, 2 people can have a 2-minute break to do whatever they need to do. You can object, but we're doing it anyway. So 2 minutes.
Not another one.
Not tonight.
No.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's all right.
Real quick, we're going to get into
We're doing George. Please. Hoping to get everyone out of here.
Question for you. Have hot water there? Do you not have hot water?
We know. We don't know hot water, going to shower, we can shower just dribbles. And if you want to have hot water in the kitchen area, it's just a little very, very, very.
So is there been any like putting hot water heater there?
There are a number of ways to fix a number of things, but I spent a whole lot of money on building and leave something. It doesn't make any sense to fix all the real things.
The person that purposes the town hall for the district, or the person that works into it.
That's okay. And this person was called over.
Is it something that's been in this area before?
Oh, yeah. They're very well known for doing this. I don't want to commit them, but they've done the old Somerville schools. They're probably going to do the Hilltop School. They fixed up new markets. So they do quality. I just want to thank you guys for budget committee meeting. Talk and then for the make sure that I got you guys. And the guys will too.
You have? Oh my goodness.
All right, folks, we're back. We're gonna get started. So thank you for those that are sticking around and want to listen to our meeting. First order of business is the approval of minutes of the January 7th meeting. Was there any additions or edits? Seeing none, we will approve by consensus. Community input. Is there any community input at this point? We do it at the beginning and the end, just so everyone knows. Seeing none? All right. So department head business. Building inspector. All right. Pointing to the wrong person. Tom, so the only thing we have on the agenda tonight for you is the junkyard license. How are we proceeding?
Mr. Castanelli has been advised that in order to maintain, he can maintain the junkyard license, but in order to maintain the towing service, he has to first petition the zoning board of adjustment for variance and then planning board for site review. And he has agreed to that. He's been notified of that. The application has been sent. So we're just waiting. It's the beginning of the process is rolling. So it's.
And he had 30 days to suspend his towing operation, right?
Right, but once, state law says if we receive an appeal on that, that action is stayed.
Okay, and he does plan to, you got an application, right? So,
yes.
All right, so he understands the process and it's working its way through then?
Yes.
Awesome, and the only other thing, I saw an email earlier, Rollins Road. You had a chance to go by, you're going to reach out to the
Yes, I took
individual again?
pictures,
Okay.
sent them in to the attorney, and I'm going to contact the
Yeah.
around to make sure that things are still working.
So there's still that truck with a plow that allegedly is being moved out of there.
Yes.
And what about the other cars on the other side? Are they all registered?
No, there are two still unregistered, so
Okay.
he still has work to do.
Okay, and we, at the backyard, you're gonna,
I'm gonna walk it with him and give him a
Okay.
call.
okay, awesome. Well, thank you. Anything else for Tom? Yep.
Clarification on the junkyard. Are you saying that, I don't want to talk about it. If you're saying that they cannot, they don't have to remove their towing business now because they got their paperwork in? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if they file an appeal, then that is correct.
So they filed an appeal?
We haven't seen it yet, but we have 30 days to do that.
Oh, okay, so within the 30 days, if they file their appeal, they can leave their business there?
Yes.
However, they do need to follow the rules of not being a nuisance
Correct.
business?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And, yeah, okay. Perfect. Anything else for Tom? Thank you for coming.
Welcome. You're off the hook for the other one. There was no disagreement. Clarification. All right, the fire chief is not here. You know what, I meant to my haste, I didn't do it. But we've got some sad news for those of you that weren't able to make it to the public hearing on the budget last Saturday. And if you haven't seen it on Facebook or anywhere else yet, the deputy chief of the fire department, assistant chief, sorry, the assistant fire chief, Kevin Hurd, passed after 36 years of very dedicated service to this town, a town that he didn't reside in. He lived over the border in Maine, but he gave us 36 years of stellar service. And we're going to owe him a debt of gratitude from his family for allowing us to have him for 36 years, a lot of nights and days that he gave to this community. So, if you would keep his family in your thoughts and prayers. Should have done at the beginning of that podcast. Next order of business is a report from the fire chief. He's not here tonight, but that's okay because he doesn't have anything really. The fire ponds that's on here is just a placeholder. Highway department, George. So the first thing we have is posting roads. That's on hold until after the budget's finalized. We have got an issue with the culvert behind the American Legion Hall. Yes. We need to deal with. Look where we are right now.
There's definitely a water problem, you know, the whole dam that's above us, it's flooding their property. Ray and I looked at it last week, and there's two ways. In the spring, we can ditch around the back of the building, and or replace the culvert and connect it back so it eliminates all the excess water. We got something we got to look at.
So my understanding that it's sort of a multi-problem problem. It's not just the culvert. I mean, there are some issues with ditching on like the water and sewer department's property, the Legion's property, but the problem that happens right now that's immediately causing the icing on the road is the culvert.
It's a broken pipe that's causing the water to come out of the ground.
So we need to, short-term remediation is what, gravel, is that what I heard?
We could probably, if we do have a significant water issue again, we could probably put some gravel along the bank, slow, keep the water into the culvert. But
Just for short-term until the ground.
now if the ground froze, there's not much we're gonna be able to do.
You know, I've heard that argument before, what you're saying,
Sorry, Mr. Troy, I'm
between
sorry.
the water and the
Sorry.
sewer department.
Sir, this is the select board meeting though, we're not engaging the public right now.
I'm with
So, I understand that, but we're not, this isn't open for public comment right now, this is just for the department.
You want information, go ahead.
You're more than welcome to offer that after we're done with dealing with the department.
On the culvert, is that something that you think that you can fix, or is it?
I don't know how, I think what we need to do is actually get a camera and put it in that pipe and see actually where this is going first, before we go anywhere.
Is this a ground pipe, or is this a pipe that's in the culvert?
There's a pipe that goes into the storm drains, across the road into the, and it's broken between the dam and the sewer system.
put a camera in there to find out where it goes first, and find out what actually it is. It may be something that's been, you know, something in there clogging it, for one thing. So we might want to go further and see what's going on.
Kind of like what we did down South Road.
Yeah, this one here, we definitely need to do something with, because this is.
So, Mr. Shorey, as the representative of the Legion, is there something you want to add to this?
What's that?
As the representative of the Legion, did you want to add anything to what
I
happened?
was just going to give you a little background to that. I went to a selectmen's meeting about a year or two ago, and I think it was over there. But since then, I think the line, it collapsed, it has collapsed. But since then, it's also plugged. So what little water, there is still some water going down through. But when was it last week when I went down to show him?
Water's coming out of the
It was
ground in several places.
a fairly warm day, and it was like a river going down through the back. And he's aware of it because he opened the ditch way down near the road this fall, wasn't it?
Right, we opened up down here.
To take care of the extra water that was going down.
Water was crossing the street.
All right, so George, the culvert is our problem. What about?
If it's attached to the storm draining system,
Right.
definitely a problem.
Right, but up at the top of the hill is.
That's a brook coming in there.
Where is all this water coming from?
Right.
Is the problem. If it's collecting all the water from above us, which it probably is, and whether that's coming in from storm drains up there, I don't know.
That brook starts all the way up to the Sandy Mix.
I don't know if that's the same brook that you just replaced the culverts now, and that's becoming more of an issue.
Right, okay. All right,
You know,
so this is something we need to look at in the springtime. But in the interim.
The only thing we could do right now is add gravel and try to keep the water from going across their parking lot, see if it's in this spring. And that, I don't know if that would cure the problem, depending on the flow. We may not have that water issue, we may not have it till spring.
Right, okay, so you're gonna monitor it, and if you need to, you're gonna put some gravel
We'll
in
do the
there?
best we can to keep, you know, see what we can do with it, but there's not much we can do with it now.
Okay.
Again, we don't know, it may require having surveys and stuff to find out where this, even the property lines are here.
We'll add it to our multitude of culvert issues. Deferred maintenance. Anyone else have any questions for George on this one? All right, so recycling, and it says hazardous waste day, there are two issues. But let's deal with the recycling first. We've sent out on the town email system that recycling at the transfer station has changed. I understand?
Begun.
Has begun.
We started Saturday because we didn't want to incur another expensive starting another dumpster, so we started using the bins.
Okay.
They're not fully completed, but they use them. And the only thing he's waiting to find out exactly what paper is recyclable and what's not, because he's asked that question, and then we're gonna start sorting the paper. As of right now, everything is in the recycling bins.
Okay. So can we send out another notice to folks, just warning them again, that they're going to start separating more than they were a week before?
Full screen recycling now.
I think
But you gotta verify on paper,
Right.
because at one time they were recycling cardboard boxes, like cereal boxes and stuff. We don't believe that's paper, right? And then they're just.
Because it's coded, or?
Yes.
So you're not taking any recycling on newspaper and that stuff right now, right?
Just this, he's waiting for, he was supposed to get a phone call this afternoon. So we're
Okay.
gonna put a bin in the shop. It's gonna have to stay inside the garage next to the cardboard. So we're gonna bring their paper in,
Right.
paper's gonna go in the bin.
Okay.
We got a dumpster given to us from, Atlanta, that they had used in the yard that we could put our paper in and bail it as we need to.
Okay, so you are gonna take paper, but you just have to find out what types of
We
paper.
gotta make sure what needs to be sorted.
So if the event that people aren't aware of what needs to be done, is it going in the hopper for the time being? Because that's what
Yeah,
they were told on Saturday.
Yeah, we're throwing it away right now.
We're throwing it away right now because we don't know
A lot
which.
of- And you're
Okay.
gonna find that with some plastic now, too. We don't know if he's waiting for an answer on the containers that you get chicken salad
Right.
and some of the vegetables and stuff like that.
Right.
Some of that stuff is not recyclable like it used to to get, especially on a return, it's gonna end up in a waste stream one way or the other if it's not able to be bailed.
But, so this is a complicated process enough
It
for
is.
people that they would show up on Saturday morning or wherever they go. So can you just make sure you keep us apprised?
We're trying, you know,
So we can send it on.
we're keeping the guys up here trying to make sure that everyone's putting things where they belong and, you know, your aluminum, your plastics and stuff, so we can at least start making some money on those products.
We'd like to be able to do that for sure. Hazardous Waste Day, so at the public hearing on the
I heard
budget, it was brought up, I wish we had much yet, but, that a resident was told that he was not allowed to bring antifreeze anymore to Hazardous Waste Day. Have we
A lot
need
of
to
towns have
confirm that.
started, a lot of towns have started putting their own bin to sort hazardous, I mean, antifreeze and or waste oil.
Right.
That depends how far we want to go. Ed's looking into what we can do with it, or if there is, you know, working with NHRA or whatever, NRRA.
Right, right.
To see what we can do with that, if we want to go to that extreme.
Okay.
Now, there's a couple of companies in Rollinsford that takes
We're
waste
gonna
oil
talk,
to
we're
do
gonna
heating.
actually gonna go talk to them.
Oh,
about it,
okay,
too.
okay. But not any, antifreeze isn't part of that.
They
Okay.
don't take antifreeze, they'll take the waste oil.
Right.
But antifreeze, when I was in Berwick, it was, Clean Harbors, and one of them was coming to get the antifreeze.
Okay, so we need to figure out a plan then, because if our residents aren't able to bring their waste antifreeze to the hazardous waste day,
We're
they
gonna get a call, so we're gonna try to get a call over tomorrow, see what this plan is, what they're doing with it.
Okay.
Or if there is, if they ever took it, I don't know if they did.
Right. Okay.
But there's no place, you know, people don't have a place to put it, you don't wanna be dumping that stuff on the ground, so.
No, we certainly do not. Please don't do that. Okay. All right. Anything else for George? Do you have anything for us tonight, George?
I do.
All right. Do you have POs or anything?
No POs.
Okay. We only take public comments on it at the beginning and at the end of the meeting. So we don't have public questions back and forth to the, or during the meeting. But if you want to stay at the end, you're more than welcome to ask a question.
I'd like to at least have you people think about opening a Home Depot or Lowe's credit card. They can make money on them.
We had one before the town moved over to the credit card.
You can make money on, you can make money, if you go on the Pro card, you can get some return on your investment. And then if you go, if the Lowe's card, you get a 5% discount, where you're not getting none of these discounts right now. Using the credit card. I think it's something that's worth having. My son works for the housing authority, he gets $17,000 worth of points on the credit card. And once I know they use a lot more than we do, but we buy a lot of stuff from Home Depot. I think we can benefit from it.
All right, so we'll look into it again.
Do you have a preference for the Home Depot? Being closer?
Home Depot's closer.
Home Depot definitely closer, but I mean, you know, they just not each place.
They don't always carry the same.
Right. No, and it's not something that's gonna get huge, it's such, I mean, it's cost saving thing, it's those are the places that we go out of.
Well, we'll take it under advisement. Caroline will look into it.
I know, we do have a candidate that we're having a background check done on, that,
For the transfer station?
for the transfer station, and I just want to bring that. He lives right here on Main Street, but non-Joel.
So are we haven't, hired?
No, not hired. We're just doing the background check on it before we go, before we offer.
Usually, if you wanted to move forward, so the check's not mailed, and you don't have to go forward with that if you don't want to go forward.
Well, why don't you bring the application up to us, we haven't seen it.
I guess just have to stick it with
You've got the process with that.
You've been in 3 or 4 times,
Okay, so you've interviewed him, and you and Ed both feel that this is someone that you want to recommend to us to hire? He's available on weekends, I don't think? So you've already interviewed him. So this is the name.
He called, I didn't hear.
Okay, so this was the posted position that's been open for a while. So it's not a new position that we're creating, it's a vacancy. Okay, so we'll need a motion to hire.
I'll make a motion to hire Norman Jolin to fill the part-time position at the transfer station.
Can we make it contingency if he passes?
That's not,
okay. Second?
Okay, so this is contingent on him passing the background check. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of offering Mr. Jolin as a part-time transfer station attendant, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, well, move forward with the background check. Thank you. Anything else for us tonight? Okay. It's okay if you don't, trust me. All right, well then, thank you, police. What do you got?
I just want to, I met with the folks with FEMA last week, and as a result of the March storm, we're going to get $10,100 and some change. That's for the actual cost for the employees, the equipment, and the product that was used, and also repair for the damaged vehicle. We're still entitled to approximately another $1,200 for administrative costs for my time for paperwork, Caroline's time to prepare the paperwork, and George's time preparing the paperwork. But right now, we're guaranteed $10,100 and some change. So,
Good job, thank you very much. And thank you again for tonight,
thank you.
for managing this. Still today, I think. I don't know. Do you have anything else?
That's all I have for you. Anything for me?
I don't have anything on the agenda for you. Anyone want to have anything for the police chief? Seeing none. Okay, we do have a welfare page. We're going to, seeing that we're not in our regular setting, we're going to put it at the end of the meeting, so we have to throw you all out and come back in. Because it has to be done in non-public session. The vote will be taken in public, and it'll be part of the minutes that reflect what action we take. So, next we move on to town administration. So the next order of business is the town meeting warrant. We're going to meet on next Monday. Usually there's a holiday, so we're going to come in. The only thing on the agenda is going to be dealing with the, we're done with the warrant. We're going to, so you all know, I have what I'd like to propose after our meeting. That may be, I'd like to possibly go back and think over to Mark and then back to me. I know we're going through, an emotional tough time right now, and I think it'd be nice if they understand. That won't be a lot. But on Monday, if they're meeting, I don't know if they're going to have a meeting on holiday. Meeting on holiday? Well, and vested intentions, I guess maybe Wednesday, or we could try to work something out. But I think it's important that they hear from us.
It's not a major, I can find out for sure, because it's not a major holiday, but I'll find out for you.
Okay. Unless anyone objects, I'm just going to buy
I might suggest apples and carrots.
Listen, I'm not going to eat the donuts, we've got them, I don't need them. But that's not to say that the guys that actually work out all the time running in and out of burning buildings can have a trouble for them. So, anyways, or a cup of coffee. So, but I'll let you know. But the only thing on the agenda for the 21st will be finalizing the warrant. So hopefully we're going to start at 5 with a public hearing on, that's the next item, the recreation fund article, which I know you have information. So if we have the public, we're starting the public hearing. Do you have information?
The public hearing's the 21st. You can choose to cancel it or you can choose to move forward with it.
So the plan that has been noticed is 5 o'clock for the public hearing on that. And then immediately following that, we're going to start our meeting. And but the only thing on the agenda will be to finalize the warrant. That will take the entire time. I don't want any more distractions on that. So the next order of business, do anyone have any questions on the 21st? The next item is recreation fund article. Our town administrator has some information for us.
It's preliminary information. It's a complicated situation. The draft of the warrant currently has 2 ways to move forward, both which could meet the intent of the Recreation Committee. the idea is that they could, after meeting the expenses of the year, if they brought in more money than that for tuition, that the extra money could be put into a fund. If they were to raise money above and beyond what it cost to raise the money, then that could go into the fund. So they could have an expendable trust, which is what the historical committee set up and approved in March. Or they could have a revolving fund. An expendable trust is going to require a warrant article every year with a specific dollar amount.
And they won't know.
Well, it's this time of year that we'll have to calculate how much money goes in it at exactly the time we're writing the warrant.
So that would work obviously for the first year then. that we
Well,
want now.
So to be clear, the warrant's been drafted and we had the public hearing on the warrant. So the warrant can change in language in insignificant ways, but dollar amounts and overall intent can't change. So not knowing which way to move forward, I don't remember whether it was option A, which is the expendable trust, or option B, the revolving fund, which one has a dollar in it. But neither of them has a significant dollar amount affixed to it, which means that there's not really any benefit to proceeding with it this year because you're not putting any money into the fund. So whatever goal you would want to achieve by doing it this year could be achieved next year while you are also putting money into the fund. The revolving fund seems to make better sense, I think, to meet the, what I think I understand the committee and the board's long-term goal is, but there are short-term implications, kind of either way you go, which is to say, the intent of a revolving fund is that it receives all the fees, and this happens, by the way, all within the general fund. The operation of it is not a separate checking account, but it all happens within the general fund. But the idea of a revolving fund is that all of the fees go into it and all the expenses come out of it, and it's self-sufficient. It's the mechanism that the police refer to sometimes for their details and buying cruisers and like that. So what's interesting about that is that it's then out of the operating budget and they do not have to provide a budget. So I'm sort of reluctant to suggest that right now because we don't have the staff and the oversight to decide that that's necessarily a good idea. The expendable trust you can do in the short term, it puts money away, and then in 10 years, when there's enough money that it could be self-sufficient within its own fund, you could close the expendable trust and put it all into the revolving fund. Or next year you could start the revolving fund and seed it with enough money that it could have all of its operations. Just understanding that there are implications about agency that we need to be careful about.
Okay, so, you just totally confused me, but that's okay.
It's a lot.
So the intent for this was to not put anything that exceeded what was raised and appropriated, raised by the committee, less the expenses that they pay back to town, because it's supposed to be self-sufficient. That money would go in versus to offset taxes because of their efforts. What kind of fund is that going to be?
That could be either. The short, simple answer is that that's an expendable trust. You pick a dollar amount, you put it in a fund, and you don't think about it anymore. And you can use it, with select boards as agents, you can use that to pay for things the following year or subsequent
But
years.
if you put a short amount of money in that fund, is that their money to keep then?
Not as an expendable trust. It's for that purpose, so you cannot use it for other purposes. So it's not their money because the select board has agency, but it is for a purpose, as set forth in the language of the article.
Okay. So if you were proposing to go that direction and there was a certain dollar amount, the philosophy of the account would be that only what is beyond what the town pays out of the operating budget to the rec has to be fulfilled and reimbursed, and only after that money could go in there and stay in there.
Plus
Towards the
donations.
next, plus donations.
Right.
Plus donations? Donations is always always been part of what was reimbursed to the town.
Well, so I say that separately because we have to be careful with donations, because when people give money to a public agency for a purpose, you are obligated by law to honor the purpose. So if people are giving it for scholarships, you cannot buy playground equipment. So the expendable either fund would be a way to keep track of that money. Not in and of itself by nature of the fund, it's a way of separating it from the general fund. But even on top of that, you're still going to have to keep track and remember that you received $500 and spent $4 for the scholarship. So you still have $100 for scholarships.
Okay.
What was the option of it on Saturday?
They were both on there, but they were both on there without money. And at this point, we cannot add money because it was not part of the public hearing process. One had $1, so you can do that if you want to do that. I think that was the revolving fund. No, she's.
I think I like the expendable trust better.
Either way, there's not really a benefit, though, to setting it up this year because you can't fund it. So you can accomplish the same goal by doing it next year and putting money into it. You can set it up and put money into it at the same time. And that way we can be a little bit more deliberate and careful.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're meeting tomorrow night, unfortunately not early enough for tonight, but we're meeting tomorrow night, and I think it's just going to have to be a topic of discussion on how to go forward. But I agree.
No, I think my questions have been answered along the way.
We're not setting the warrant until next Monday, so we don't have to decide whether or not we're moving forward with it. It sounds like
I think the recommendation.
Well, they can have a conversation with you tomorrow night,
Yeah.
as a preference, but the guidance from Caroline is that perhaps we wait and see.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that from, we can think about it for a week.
They're not going to make a public hearing on notice, though?
Public hearing happened, yeah, for next Monday, so.
But no obligation to move forward. I'm good with that. I agree that we should probably hold out.
All right, so,
Oh, because it's not by petition. Got it.
so, are we good with the rec fund for now? Well, I say good, I don't know if we're there or not, so. All right, so we have, next item is Suzanne's offer of assistance to the DRA portal. So Suzanne Wood, as the former chair of the select board, has offered to assist Caroline with entering and myself with information, entering information to the report. Is there any objection to that offer of help? So we'll notify Ms. Seaver and thank her for her offer. Okay. Next is voter's guide. We have, every year we put out a voter's guide. This year, different. So I would, along with Salme, who usually helps with the layout, and Caroline will draft one after we set the warrant. Obviously next week we'll start working on it. It's here if you want a placeholder, since we don't decide it. Unless someone else wants to take it on. Okay. I didn't see anyone jumping up saying, no, I don't want to write it. All right, so we'll move on. Budget committee secretary posting. We saw a vacancy. Anyone wants to be the secretary of the budget committee? Okay. It pays up to $11 an hour, so consider it. Board member activities. Denise, what we have going on this week?
I have rec tomorrow night, and I think that's all I have.
Budget committee got next Wednesday, right?
Oh, no, it's this Wednesday.
No, it's
Is it, what is it?
It's tomorrow.
Oh, it's the 23rd, that's next week.
So you got a reprieve of 1 week for that. Miles?
I believe I've got nothing.
All right, that's good. I don't know what my calendar says, but I'm gonna be in here working with the DRA portal and other things, so. I think this will work. I don't know if it's any other meetings. Historical commission not meeting this week. So I think we're free.
building permits 2019-003 for Jessica Welch on Portland Avenue, replacing copper LP gas pipe with black iron. A fee of $30, approved by Tom Clark.
Okay, so it's 934 Portland Avenue. Is that not a, it's not the flood fee, is it? I guess it's a grade. Is it plumbing? No, it's gas, so, all right, it's a grade, or it's not plumbing or electrical, so it's gas, so probably have reviewed it, $30 fee.
$30?
Yes.
Yeah, replacing some piping from replace copper LP gas piping.
Right. Those are all out. Sign this one.
Alrighty then. Purchase order 1580 for LHS Associates, maintenance on the ballot machine.
It's going to be done on the.
Oh, done on 111, cleaning and new battery, $250.
I'll second that.
Purchase order 1580 has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Happy to help.
Only thing else is this a notification of petition warrant call for the Swansea School Board to negotiate a contract for MSAD 35 to send all sixth grade students to MSAD 35, effective July 1st of 19.
Just advisory.
It's just, yeah, they've got enough on their ballot to have it go through. That's it.
We don't need to do anything with that, so perfect. And the only thing we had in here from last week, we didn't sign. So, spoken to Caroline, we're good to go on the equalization certificate, data certificate, so we should sign it. So each year we have to certify that we, the undersigned, do hereby certify that the assessment and sales information provided by us on the Hampton Mosaic Equalization System has been thoroughly reviewed by this board and is accurate to the best of our knowledge. It was presented by our
I know, but did we have questions last week?
We did, yes. I wanted to make sure it actually had been reviewed.
It has been reviewed. It's a process that Avatar does for us. They go online, they review all the sales and compare them and certify them. And this is certifying that that's been done. It's been done.
Any other correspondence? I don't see any. Community input. Honey.
You might,
Oh, yeah,
I got a complaint and a attaboy at the same time, if that makes any sense.
You mind coming up just a little bit? I can't hear
Hear
you.
you.
The phone system is actually finally kicking on now, and it's, we can't hear the thing, so we gotta be a little louder, sorry.
I got a complaint
Okay,
and an attaboy at the same time.
you're at the right place.
Oh, great. This past Saturday, 8:30 a.m., I went to the transfer station.
Yeah.
I go up, I do my normal thing, getting ready to drop all my recyclables in. Oh, you gotta separate them. I said, when did this come about?
Right.
Well, the word went out yesterday. I said, to who? Well, it went up. I separated. He says, your newspaper is gonna go here. So I put my newspapers down there, and the guy said, oh no, they go up in the hopper. So I'm making this vicious circle. So I got home and I said, I'll check the website. Nothing. I checked the website again today. There's still nothing. You know, it's great that we're doing it, but I'd like to go and prepare. I mean, that way I had my plastic separated, and, you know, that's all. I didn't want to sit there and pick through my recyclables. Make sense?
I understand. 100% makes sense. So we apologize for that. We have, it was supposed to have gone out on the website. I'm not trying to pass the buck, I'm really not. But our website's not maintained by a town employee, it's done by a volunteer. Clearly it didn't get out, it didn't get put on the website, so we will send it out to her again to ask her to put it.
Well, that brings up a point. Where do you get all your information for all of these meetings? I mean, we got some important, now there's a good section on the website right now with the meetings, but especially with the bond and what, I mean, I don't want to miss one of these meetings.
Right.
So, I mean, and I've signed up and given my email, so.
Are we up to date on
They're all
those things?
going out on email.
So, but there aren't any other meetings that haven't, we didn't set any new meetings tonight, so we were up to date on
We're up to
everything.
date with postings.
So we should be up to date on everything.
Did you not say that a week from today, at your selectmen's meeting, is the second bond meeting?
No, that was tonight.
That's tonight.
That was tonight. The first one was Saturday.
Did you, I didn't remember seeing that meeting posted as a bond meeting. I saw it posted as a budget meeting from the budget committee to the public. That's my interpretation of how it was presented. I didn't see anything about a bond meeting.
No, but it didn't have to be in the newspaper. So it wasn't specifically a bond public hearing, though it met the criteria for the bond. The bond rules require that you have to have Saturday's meeting, the budget public hearing on all the warrants that include the warrant about that facility. So it addresses that. The notice didn't specifically say that that topic would be addressed. You're right, it could have been more explicit, but it's not really different from any other year. It wasn't when we did the fire truck or anything else, which is not an excuse. You're right, like we can always do better with getting information out.
We gotta be careful. This is the biggest bond this town has ever thought of undertaking.
So
You know?
we've met the spirit of the requirements.
Okay?
Tonight was the actual bond hearing itself.
It's a shame.
Although there were not
I
a lot
mean-
of questions about the bond itself, but
No, it's a shame. I mean, you look what was here. What would you say, 50?
maybe.
I mean, is that a fair figure? 50 people are gonna make a decision on a 2.5 or a 4 bond? That ain't right. I mean, I
Again, I'm
understand.
not arguing with you. I think I mentioned that in the meeting. It would have been nice if more people could have come, but I get it. I mean, people are busy, so.
Saturday, when they had the public meeting there with the budget committee, they brought up a replacement of a dump truck.
Yes.
Well, for what it's worth, I spoke against the fire truck because you spent $540 grand on a fire truck, and I gave the fire chief a quote to overhaul that transmission that had a problem that we never could be told what it was, for $2,400 some odd dollars, with a 2-year warranty. So here again, now we're saying it's got brake problems with the stump truck, and it's carrying more weight than what it should. If it's carrying more weight than what it should, that's our fault.
Yeah.
Our fault.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So the truck doesn't need to be replaced for an error that we're doing. But if the brakes are not working correctly, then why aren't we fixing them? It's a hell of a lot cheaper than 156 grand.
Right. So I think that the best answer I can give you is that we went to, we had it evaluated over at Mixed Trucking and at the city of Dover. Mick gave us an estimate of, what was it, approximately $20,000 in resale value, George, as I recall. So we're hoping that we can get $20,000 for it now to offset the cost of the.
What did he give you for a price to repair the brakes?
It's not a problem with the brakes. Adequate for the truck. What they did is they took a 6500 series truck and made it the size of a big dump truck. They got a dump body on it the same size as our big International, which is, the truck is overbuilt for what the truck is.
So apparently the truck was built to meet specifications so that someone with a non-CDL could drive it.
it wasn't built to the specifications of what was actually needed for this town.
I understand,
For the
but
size
it's
of our
small.
roads, so we're hoping that we can recoup some of our loss and move on to a new truck. I mean, the voters voted down, they voted down.
No, don't. Put smaller body on it.
So
Is that too big of a-
we're past that at the moment, though. I'm waiting for my kudos, though. Where's my attaboy?
What, your attaboy is the fact that you are doing the recycling.
Oh.
That's what I said, you get it both
I
at
missed it,
once.
I'm sorry. It was I missed it, I'm sorry.
Hey, you're not gonna get two.
I always try. But we appreciate your comments.
I want to say, people get dropped off that email us, the town server, just out of the clear blue, like I have been.
Have you been receiving anything recently from us in town?
Me neither.
You either?
It seems like every January people get dropped.
So thank you for bringing that up. So you may want to
I
resubmit again
got notification,
for tonight?
that my name was accepted on my email. Just thank you for signing up. You know, and I'm waiting to hear,
Yeah.
and
Clearly the
Why
glitch
aren't-
is good. A couple of people are saying they didn't get the email either,
so why aren't we maintaining the website?
That is a great question.
No, I don't have the answer, but I'm
No,
asking.
I'm going to tell you the answer, because in the past, it was decided it wasn't a priority to do this. Few past boards in the last several years have decided it's a good way to communicate with people. That wasn't always valued. And we're looking to make some changes, but I mean, it's kind of like a water balloon. Every time we push one little spot and we think we're making progress somewhere, something else bulges. I'm really not trying to pass the buck, but there's only so many dollars to go around.
I
There's only
understand.
so many hours of the day to make things work. It's still a priority, I think, for what it was for me, and I know it was for Suzanne when she was still on the board, to try to get as much information out as possible. And it's gonna cost money to have it maintained by the town. We don't pay the hosting fees, any of that right now.
Okay.
It's a volunteer who's giving it all to us, so we're gonna have to figure that
It's
out.
pretty hard to
moving forward.
complain about a volunteer.
Well, it is, right, exactly, that's why I want to be careful, because we really do greatly appreciate all the work she does for us, but sometimes things fall off her plate and they don't always get out.
See, the problem is there is no good way now to notify people. You put the notice in the paper and look around. There aren't many people left to get a newspaper.
Right.
I
Also,
still do.
Like the bond that we had to put, by law, we had to put that in the newspaper.
Yeah. So
Whether
you-
anyone saw it in the newspaper or not, I couldn't tell you, but it cost us $300+ to do it, so.
See, the other places you post it in the post office.
Yep.
I go there maybe twice a year.
No, sorry.
And the other place in
I have to
town
go
hall.
every day, no one delivers my mail, so.
And I avoid the town hall, because every time I go there, it costs me money. So, I mean,
I didn't charge anything.
out of the three places, you might be better off to post it down at the transfer station.
We could start.
And that may be a smart ass answer, and it's not meant to be, but there's a lot of people that go there.
Right. We've talked about a community bulletin board at the transfer station in the past too, so it makes sense what you're saying. Anyone else? You're all here. Eric, go ahead.
And just to piggyback on that, if the article goes through for the police, for their message board, that is something that can be displayed in wherever, and they can display meetings when
That is
meetings are
true.
coming.
That is true. I think Bob mentioned that, so it can be used for reporting stuff around town if we need it. So we also have a little sandwich board thing that you'll
I want you to
see.
hear what I had to say.
We tried.
And it's not secondhand information that you get.
Hey, George, what's the carrying capacity of that truck currently?
That truck's under 26,000. You
Okay.
put a full load of salt and that sander on that truck, you're well over weight. That's the problem.
And I'm just trying to get some justification from this. It was on Saturday, I think it was on the warrant, 7 was it, I think, for the truck? I can't recall exactly which one, but 165,000 for a new one? And you're going with a smaller chassis?
A chassis that's built to haul the load, and the truck designed to build
But still 26,000.
under 26, but it's designed for that.
But if you have a truck currently that's designed to
We
hold
don't.
26,000,
We won't be filling that. What the problem is, when we load the hopper, which is in the truck, that brings the weight up. The other truck won't have a sand hopper, it's gonna be built into the body. No, it isn't.
Okay, so we're not gonna argue about, we can argue about that after the meeting, but, so.
Well, no, I mean,
we're
it's a
not gonna-
justification for $165,000. I mean, when there's a $2.4 million bond that's being considered going through, and then even, I mean, the police sign, you know, every cent is,
I don't disagree with you. There's a, yeah,
so I
choices
mean,
have to be made.
And what's your name?
Eric Foss.
Sorry, I thought you got through the first one. Any other community comments? If not, we're gonna call the end of this meeting. We thank you all for coming. Most people had, well, I'm not, I'm sorry, I misspoke. We're not ending the meeting. We're going into non-public session to do with welfare, and I announced earlier.
That thing.
And then you all can't be here, but I'm sorry. I didn't want to kick everyone out and have to come back and then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all great friends.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I have no problem.
I didn't want to